Hey everyone, this is the Kubeflow Notebooks meeting for the 10th of July. This meeting is usually about Notebooks 2.0, and we'll be talking a bit about that later. I always want to highlight, if you don't know what that is, there's a pretty reasonable introduction. It's a full rewrite, it's a new version of Kubeflow Notebooks. Here's the FAQ, it's on issue 85 on Kubeflow/notebooks. There's a design doc, there's some motivation information, there's some examples. The work is well underway in the Kubeflow Notebooks repo. It's kind of split into three pieces: controller, backend, and front end. Feel free to, I guess, ask questions later. But the roadmap is the thing that we try and list out for overall kind of persona-based, admin of cluster should be able to do this, and the user of cluster should be able to do this. So these are not specific actual features, but they're kind of outcomes. And so these are how we try and build the epics and other things like that turn into the actual product. If you're a user of Kubeflow Notebooks, please add yourself to the adopters file. I think we probably need to advertise this a little bit more. I know a lot of people here are mostly developers, so it's a bit hard to represent your company in that sense. But if you also use overall Kubeflow or another piece of Kubeflow, while you're asking your company to let you do that, please add yourself to the other ones that you use as well. Obviously, quite a few components of Kubeflow, and I know that a lot of people use various combinations. If people are new today, we always like to give a chance to say hi, and obviously, I'd love Kimonos to start. I know that he's not new. I know that he's technically not new by any definition, but I would like him to say hi because I don't think he's ever really been to one of these meetings.
That's true. At least for the Node V2 part, I've been way too absent. So, hi everyone. Nice to meet you, and really nice to see so many faces in this meeting. I'm one of the other working group leads for notebooks. I've been more historically involved in the very first components of V1 for notebooks. I helped a lot with write the initial controller. I wrote the initial web apps for the crude web apps and the common codes, and contribute a lot also to the rest of the core components of Kubeflow. And indeed, one of the main things that I want to also discuss today is for the migrations from the Kubeflow repo, both for the dashboard to give an overview of where we are, where I think that are some next steps, but also highlight potentially what we could do for notebooks repo as well. At least get a little bit the ball rolling, see what are the questions that we could all of us discuss, and potentially what are some low-hanging fruit or how to see what efforts to coordinate. But because I see that you also already have an agenda, there are other things that you want to get through. Let me not take all of the time, but Matthew, anytime that you feel that you've covered the rest, I'm happy to also talk about that. So, yeah, again, nice.
Yeah, we should definitely just quickly overview it at the beginning. I don't want to obviously let it take the meeting, but Notebooks 2.0 is a lot, always goes forever. That we can talk about it forever. There's thousands of tasks. So I also don't want to. I want to make sure that people who are interested in various topics obviously are here for the topic they're interested in. But I think it is sensible. Oh, anyone else who's new today as well, feel free to say hi as well first before we quickly jump along. I think there is some names that are new, but I'm not sure. If not, that's fine too. Hi to everyone who is new. So the one topic I do want to talk about, which is the Notebook 1.0 topics. The main topics that are standing are this migration issue and the graduation. I don't really know exactly what the status of graduation is, given I think we're talking with the CNCF about actually being able to graduate, because I don't think they're graduating any project at the moment. So it's not happening right now, if you know what I mean. So the question is, are we able to make an exception for Kubeflow? So we will have to see. That's what we're working on in the other meetings with the CNCF leadership. So we in the community meetings, that happen every alternate week. So if you're interested, come to the next Tuesday's meeting, and we'll see if hopefully there's good news. Maybe not. Okay, AMD was working on new Kubernetes stuff. I don't think they're in the meeting today. If you are, feel free to say hi, but if you're not, that's fine. We'll move on. For the dashboard, so I just want to quickly figure out, so it does connect to Notebooks 2.0, because as one of the sprints for this, one of the elements of the task for this month is trying to get Kubeflow Notebooks 2.0 to be deployable. And as part of that, obviously there needs to be a dashboard deployed, or a UI of some kind, and a controller for profiles and other things. So it does block that, obviously, the existing, well, it's not that it blocks it. You could just install it from the manifest repo, but I think being able to make changes and other things like that will probably be important. And obviously, I'd love to in the doc not say go to the manifest repo, which who knows what's happening over there. So like, I much prefer them say, hey, point to the other repo that we control, the dashboard repo. Here's how you install it. These are the steps that you would use to remove the pieces that you could replace with your own thing. So I know a lot of people here from Red Hat and others that and other big companies that use notebooks but don't care about the rest of Kubeflow, or are selling a product, or are not going to be using the rest of, like not using all of Kubeflow. So it's, and what's good about this is that it also shows a reference being like, here's the, like pointing just at the manifest repo is a bit dangerous, I think. Anyway, so the steps that are remaining, so we used to have the code on Kubeflow. The current step, as far as I see it, is there is some weird PRs going on, but the main goal is to get to the point where we could actually release a version of Kubeflow dashboard from that new repo. And I think Kimonos, I don't know if you've followed up from yesterday, our discussion. I don't know what you've discovered there. So it's one of these things that we will be assigning people tasks in this as they relate to making it releasable, just because if there's no neutral way to deploy Kubeflow Notebooks 2.0, it's not going to be a successful project, right? So obviously, even if people who are working on, like, it makes sense for even other companies to help, is what I'm trying to say. But other than that, Kimonos, am I missing anything? I guess, do you want to give an update about where you think the current state is and what the most important next task is to get to that state?
So the main one work that I've been catching up with is also this PR that actually was where I started, and based. Oh wait, let me send it in the chat, which is also what kicks. Based on this, to also give an overview of what was the issue with merging it and where we are at this point with the CI. So my current understanding, but if someone also is confused or have a different state, let's discuss so that we make sure we're all on the same page, is that we've migrated the code for the components, and now we're at the last stage that we want to have the CI for release, be able to release the component, having the CI for when we merge a PR to be able to run integration and unit tests, when the PR is merged to publish an image with the latest tag, or having what we're calling with Matthew a release mechanism, in which the way it used to work is that we had a file in the repo that is called releasing/version. So we had this file, then a Python script that the Python script would run, and once the script would run, it would go and update all of the places that had manifest to use the tag that we want. So what it looks like is, at the end of the day, a pull request that had run the script that updated all the manifests that say, hey, don't use the notebook server with this random commit, use from the specific tag that we want. And the file in the repo, this releasing version file, is updated with this version. And once we merge the PR, it means that the CI would go and publish tags, build the images based on this tag. So what is happening here, and the state that we are now, is that thank Matthew.
This is the old releasing one. I just wanted to say this is the old releasing README.
So at least for now.
No, I'm saying this is pretty up to date, by the way, if you haven't seen it lately, Kimonos.
Yeah. Thanks, Matthew. And also, by the way, I'm not hard in thought of like this should be the only way. At least this was historically the way that we're doing the releases. And at least for me, it's good enough and okay to at least unblock and have a release so everyone is happy to get us started. I think it's okay so that we can keep this process. So where we are right now in the repo is we have most of those files committed, but the last step that we try to do from this PR is try to use the GHR Kubeflow dashboard repo for building the image, for integration tests and all of that. The main problem that I saw in this PR that we might need to work a little bit is that alongside, from what I understand, the Google Summer of Code, Julius was trying to, with another student, to help to refactor a little bit the code. Now, the mistake is also a little bit part of me. It's not like I'm saying I'm pointing fingers at anyone, because I also didn't review this PR in a timely manner. But this PR looks like it introduced some changes for how we're previously running the tests. For example, previously, when I wanted to run integration tests for the profile controller, it would go and build the image and then use that image for the testing. well, and KFAM as well. But now the code from this pull request deviates and created some bash scripts that now do not do exactly this. For example, it would only build image for the profile controller and not for KFAM and profile controller as well. So the next steps are actually, to be honest, I'm never in favor of reverting a whole PR because someone put some time into it. But at least having a call and discussion with the folks from the PR and Julius on what did they have in mind to improve, and revert potentially some of those changes and agree on a structure of how to run the tests. For example, after we did an exploration on the existing PR and we saw how to make it work. So once we get that working, actually we're almost ready on the repo to have a working CI that can release GitHub versions, etc.
Which is like obviously this is the reason this happened is because we deviated from the plan as well, which was that we should effectively mirror the existing, well, not release process, but testing process initially, and then make changes after we've actually got it successfully doing, But anyway, that's a separate discussion.
So at least from this repo, for me, the best one, and I'm planning to at least start some task and coordinate also in Slack. So anyone that wants to really have for anyone that wants to join. So at least we define exactly how to bring it back to where we want it. And then it's a matter of having some tasks to clean up a little bit the CI. I can help with also providing the context of what was happening in the past and why it broke. So all of us can discuss and agree how it should be now, depending on those are the criteria we want and how it was used to work. Okay, what can we? Because I'm also not against trying to improve it a little bit.
So the only thing that we need to make sure we decide is, are we going to actually do this? Because doing this does allow us to release twice on another version 1.10, but that's a bit confusing. Also, it means that we lose all the history though, because we migrated every single historical tag to these old repos, right? So it just depends on whether we want an easy way to migrate to go back to old versions, or if we just don't care and we'll have double ups on every repo.
Matthew, small question, if you know. Yeah, you're saying about, for example, if we migrate and keep the tags like 1.10 to be the same.
It's more like, so making a whole bunch of new repos is fine. It just means that there will only be the tags for the new repo in there.
So just because maybe I have something in mind, let me know if it's aligned. In my mind, for example, the new repos would have a different tag. For example, the profile controller there would be V1, or we could decide, but it wouldn't be 1.10 to align with the Kubeflow versioning. Is this what you had in mind? Or
no, that's a separate idea. I think we should probably, definitely the next release out of this repo should be 1.11. I think it would be very confusing for it to not be 1.11. But at a minimum, I don't want it to be V2 though. Like, I think we should be working towards a V2, but I don't think that is, I think we should just start with 1.11, you know what I mean? And then from there, we just decouple completely from Kubeflow, because 1.11 isn't a version that's released, obviously, of Kubeflow. So then we'll probably release 1.12 in a month, and then 1.13 in a couple months after that, you know what I mean? Whether or not it just have no relevance to whether there's Kubeflow anymore, just like all the other components.
Okay, so
that's my proposal, but not 1.10, because 1.10 already exists.
No, that's what I want to ensure. Okay, we're in a line that not 1.10, some other version we can discuss. Our proposal is 1.11, but yeah, okay, so that's.
And then eventually we move to a 2.0, where we do a much more significant refactor with the consent of the rest of the project, you know what I mean, and users, so that people like Red Hat or Apple and others can adopt pieces from the dashboard repo more easily, you know what I mean, where we make them more pluggable or whatever else, you know what I mean, like that's kind of the goal.
I'm keeping some small notes of those proposals that we have to at least, like, it's one thing then to agree on those small procedural things so that we can keep track of those, while at the same time we keep on pushing with the rest of the small code for the CI, so we can keep on tackling.
So the next step then is to get Julius in the room and just make sure that he knows that we're working on this, and not to merge the PRs because they're not being reviewed, as his quote, like, so, yeah. Have you talked to him?
Though, he has a point, at least, and sorry if I cut you off. From my point, I also should have, for example, reviewed, because he pinged me a month ago. So I can understand that if he's also this mentor, that he needs some support from us as well to help with some of the PRs.
But yeah, what I'm saying is, like, we just need to make sure that he knows, because I know that he's literally going to merge this. He even mentioned, like I can just put a hold on it. I'll just do that. Just indicate my discontent. But I'll hold all current PRs. Please reach out to. I'm just gonna say you're leading this effort, okay? As he is now leading the effort to migrate
Okay, don't point it like
this
I
repo.
wouldn't say leading
Thanks.
us. Is
No, you
now
are. You're the lead of
yeah,
this. You're being delegated.
sure, but don't cut him off like this.
No, I need to. I'm doing that. Okay. So I don't want to merging this PR because he will get in the way. That's kind of what I'm saying. Like this, especially this one, because it will cause the creation of all those new registries without an owner.
What do you mean?
So if this code ran, and which it will do on merge, it will cause the creation of all of the registries.
I think the creation is okay because we're going to be using the latest tag, like at least have a latest. So there is
But
something
we
in
should
the
just agree
system.
on all the names of the repos, for example, and things like that.
Okay, the next one. What do you mean? Which names for the
So
which images to use for each component? You mean, right?
like we've got the opportunity now that we're renaming things to rename things.
Perfect. Okay, putting it. I'm keeping it again at the same point. The
All I'm saying is
discussion
just
point.
reach out to you anyway. Like all I'm saying is I was trying to very clearly indicate that he should reach out to you is kind of what I'm saying.
Oh yes, and I'm right now trying to get also your feedback on what are the points that one I'm keeping the version that
It's fully
1.11
up
or
to
not.
you. Like this is why you're leading it. But like
Oh
I mean, let's talk about it, but like you get to make the call. That's what I'm trying to say, right? Like this is what I want
yes,
you to do. But like
but I
my
want.
suggestion is that just in this very brief opportunity of changing things, that we just evaluate whether the names currently make sense. Like there's one that, for example, is very painful, which is, I believe, central dashboard, which I think this is wrong somehow, actually, interestingly. I think the central dashboard has a dash in one case and does not in the other.
I would also change the admission webhook to pod defaults.
That's what I'm saying, right? So like this is so you get to make all these calls, but what I'm saying is like
Mhm.
and because he does have GSOC contributors that can help out and things like that. I don't know if you're on those meetings. He has them every Monday at like really early Pacific time, so I can't usually attend. But yeah.
So from my mind, yes, the goal I have mostly is to expose what are discussion points because I'm gonna start an issue for to make sure all of us are in sync, not just me take a decision somewhere. The discussion points that I had in mind, at least for the dashboard, is to align with Julius on the structure of the PR so that we can have anyone, not just Julius, that wants to help with tasks, to be able to pick up things that we change on the CI while we clearly define what we want, how we want the CI to work. And then the process-wise points we need to discuss are what version tag to use later on and which names at least to get us started. So this is my overview for the dashboard.
Yeah. So other than that, the next steps we always had, which was, so once we do this, once we can achieve a release, once we get a 1.11 alpha 1 or something, like I don't know what we'll call it, right? Something like that, which means creating the 1.11 release branch in that repo, cutting a tag for the release, you know what I mean? Right? We could also just cut a 1.11 with whatever the current state of the code is, right? We could just do that. I think it's probably the best bet, as long as there hasn't, we need to just make sure there wasn't any code changes merged, but I think there was. That's my one concern, but whatever. I don't think they were in dashboards or profile or anything like that, though. I think they were only in the Angular rewrite, which is not released, so that doesn't matter. So that's fine. And then once we've done that, though, then we need to remove the code from the old one because people are merging commits, unfortunately, in the old repo as well. And now we already have to do a kind of cherry picking some PRs into the new repo as well. Because I believe, see, there's some random PRs merged. All notebooks is fine, but this one specifically. I don't even know if this is a good PR or not. Who knows? But we need to remove that code, and then we also need to go through all the PRs that were closed forcibly on the old repo and migrate them if necessary to the new repo.
To be honest, I wouldn't go that route. Like I would say people that, hey, we close your PR and urge them, but I wouldn't put it on us to open someone else's PR again. Like if they really want, we'll apologize that for the inconvenience, but it's up to them if they want to reopen and can support doing the requested changes to reopen it.
And by the way, the last step is the one that we'll move on to the Notebooks 2.0 stuff, I think now, but like is this one that affects that unless you have something else, which is set migrate the auth istio config dex auth to proxy reference manifests from Kubeflow manifests into the, because like my proposal is that we use the 1.12 release to include all of that. You know what I mean? Or we make the real release of 1.11. You know, like that's, I guess we have like an alpha, because this is the thing that we care about from Notebooks 2.0, which is the ability to point back to this repo and say, step 1, install Istio. Step 2, install the root Istio configs from the reference version. If you don't like them, here's what you could change them, you know, as an explanation, you know, in the doc for the Notebooks 2.0. And then separately, install auth to proxy, and then here's what you could replace it with. You know, like these kind of just like because from the context of people don't want dashboard, they want notebooks, right? You know what I mean? So it's like start from where they're actually wanting, and this is for developers initially, and people, and because then when we get up on stage at KubeCon and say, hey, we want you to integrate Notebooks 2.0 if you have a notebook system, replace it with this. You know what I mean? Like we're working on a new one. It's really cool. Yeah. Anyway. So I want it to be easy to show how. Yeah. Anyway.
Before we go though to the Notebooks 2.0, there's one small thing I want to actually highlight. From my side, I also want to start working on the migration of the notebook components for V1 as well to the Notebooks V1 repo branch that we have. And I believe that this can also be done in parallel to the rest of the efforts. At least for me, I would even put it below somewhere along the same lines to align with the effort from cleaning up the Kubeflow repo. Although this migration will be a little bit more involved because it has other sets of discussion points like what is the branch even going to have any more releases? Is it going to have further tags? Do we expect any more, like even if it's a latest kind of thing, which we cannot have a latest? Which
I think
could
that
also,
one. I think also that one should be pushed to the existing registry. You know what I mean? Because for example, we must continue to release under the notebook servers, right? Because these would be crazy to not continue to release. So we will need. So unless these stay in Kubeflow, we will be needing to continue to make releases at least until 2.0 is released out of the old branch. You know what I mean?
So you mean that still, even once if we migrate, it should keep on pushing
Well,
on?
what I'm saying is we could split the repo even further and make a notebook servers repo, but like that's, you know, like what, because like these are kind of versioned on their own anyway in some sense, right? That's kind of so it's not. I've always thought that this could make sense, you know, like having. Yeah.
Indeed, but I think it adds a bit of toil right now.
So I'm saying that's why the plan wasn't to do that. It was just to move everything across, and then this one has to connect to the old repos. That's kind of what I was saying as a result.
How do you have it in mind for connecting though, just to make sure I'm saying?
Well, no, just like push. Like so when the repo gets a release on the, or a tag of any kind on the new Kubeflow, rather than when commits are merged into Kubeflow, that change these files. They get built. Instead, they get built by when things get merged into Kubeflow notebooks -v1.
But pushed in the same register for Kubeflow.
Yes, because these ones will be deleted, right? So there's no way we like. Even though I think it would probably potentially make sense to leave them here, we're not going to do that. Yeah. So.
Okay. Yeah. This is for sure one of the critical discussion points.
And I still think there's a chance that we should do that with the dashboard as well, but I'm more open to not doing it for the dashboard.
Yeah, I see what you mean. In any case, I'm gonna start a small issue for this as well.
Let's start with the dashboard though. Let's so that we can get that one done. Because I think let's bite off that piece first. You know what I mean? Like let's because I think that one's the one with the most attention right now.
To be honest, I would like to at least create even one issue for the notebooks as well, and start both the discussion for the versions. Where
I mean, let's have this discussion in the Kubeflow notebooks repo or something like that.
And at the same time, we could have some small lower hanging fruit, even for moving the code for notebooks as well.
I really don't want to end up in that situation again where we have two brains though, because like the reason we didn't move notebooks was because on the off chance that the dashboard migration took a really long time, which obviously it did, it would have been acceptable to just not make a new 1.10 dashboard release, but it's not acceptable for me not to be able to release a new set of notebook images, for example. You know what I mean? So like that was why I was like, I still need to be able to, if they choose to make a Kubeflow 1.11, which I don't think they are currently right now, but if they did choose to, I would need to release a new notebooks images because for a lot of people, those are like the first entry point to Kubeflow. So if those are out of date and don't have the latest PyTorch or whatever, you can't run them on new GPUs or you can't run, you know what I mean? Like it's a bad experience for everyone.
I lost the train of thought.
What
Could
I'm
you
trying to say
repeat
is
it?
that like the reason why we didn't migrate the code is because as soon as we have the true source of the code being in the other repo, we need to be able to release from that repo.
Yes.
And that takes a lot of time, right? So we're struggling to even do the dashboard one, which is simpler. You know what I mean? That's kind of why I was like, until I had resource to actually do the dashboard. Like, to be clear, the Notebooks 2.0 people will start caring about the Notebooks 1.0 code probably much closer to release if we choose to release with those example images being the same.
I still don't understand. To me, they're completely orthogonal, the dashboard and the notebooks.
All I'm trying to say is if dashboard is easy or at least possible, then it should be achievable in the next month, right? And then we can move the notebooks after that or wherever it takes, right? I mean, like there's no reason to start two different really big projects at the same time because almost all the tasks are the same.
For what it's worth, Matthew, I feel like I have developers that could like work on both of these. I've had people asking for, work that they can pick up and stuff. So, I don't think like if there was like, if we had, as Kimonos is saying, he wants to get engaged here. We want to make traction. If we felt like we could review in timely fashion and give feedback, I do feel like we could get developers on keyboard to make strides in both of these areas. Just to give you from like, not saying that like I can help fully staff this, but I do think I could like find developers that are like eager and ready to contribute that we could kind of do a two-pronged assault from my perspective.
At very least, I just ask that you wait 1 week. You know what I mean? Like try and make some progress on dashboard. And if you fail to make any progress there, because I just don't want to risk not being able to release V1. That's not for Andy, but for Kimonos, you know what I mean? Which is like, if we don't see any progress in a week, then I'm not comfortable doing the V1 migration for notebooks because there's too much risk that it won't be releasable by the time that they force us to release a 1.11. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of in fact, right now we would still be releasing dashboard out of the out of the Kubeflow repo. For example, you know what I mean? If a dashboard if a Kubeflow release was forced on us, right? I would have to release out of the dashboard repo. But of the notebook, I'm sorry, the Kubeflow repo. So in the same way that I'd like to make that not have to be the case for all the dashboard components. Anyway, all I'm saying, let's just try and make some progress in this week. If we can get some progress, then I'll feel confident being like, yes, go ahead, please. Because then also we can get the same people involved anyway, right? Because from Red Hat's perspective and other perspective, they care more, presumably right now, at least like right now, about dashboard being workable so that when we link to it in the Kubeflow notebooks repo, it's usable, right? That's, you know what I mean? Which for reference also includes this step, right? Because right now I would have to point in the README for the Notebooks 2.0 installer, we would have to say, go to this weird subfolder in the manifest repo and apply those manifests. It's like, oh, that's crazy, you know? Like, like this is not a usable experience for a normal developer, right? Yeah, Andy, sorry.
And I'm sorry, just when you talk about progress you want to see in the upcoming week, is this really around these discussion points that Kimonos has been taking notes on, the naming and stuff like that? You want to see clarity on exactly the end goal that we're targeting, right?
Yeah, and Kimonos gets to make all the calls with regards to dashboard. I'm fully okay with letting him do that. It's just like, let's try and get momentum, you know what I mean? That's kind of what I'm saying. And then Julius should be aligned to our movement, you know what I mean? And if that isn't the case, we need to make sure that alignment happens, is what I'm trying to say. Like, he can't be merging PRs. If we're actively going here with adding new developers, adding new things, he can't be merging PRs there, you know what I mean? And especially not, he can be, just only under the normal review process, not under the absent of review, we're going to force merge the PR process, if you know what I mean? Like, under the normal. And then I'm just saying you're the lead, so you get to make the final call now, as long as you have the resourcing in time. Again, Andy's offering you support, but I don't think that support is very useful to you until there is actually a plan, if you know what I mean.
I think it can be, because ideally for me, I'd like next week to, aside from the process points of what that we just discussed, we could also use Andy's help with anyone that's interested to help also on the code side to keep on pushing the momentum. So we both agree on the process side of what tags, what versions, and where to push, but also fix the actual CI and be like, okay, everything is ready. We agreed also on the tags. Push the button. We're ready.
So if you guys want to connect offline, I think it's probably the best next step then.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds good. And you can do it publicly in the thread as well, or just message each other. It's fine. In the
Of
Kubeflow
course.
/ notebooks Slack thread.
And
Cool.
I think it will be the best way now to also include Julius. So also, it doesn't feel like thread or like, oh, what are those people came? They're taking what we do and what is it? But keep him in the
Well,
loop.
I mean,
And
he's kind of not a maintainer anyway, right? So it's kind of a bit weird that he was merging things, but yeah.
so I think
He
we
doesn't
will
involved in the
be
actual code, right? He's only involved in the manifest, which was kind of the problem where it's like there's just a misalignment of incentives a little bit
small question, Matthew. I think this call is also next week, right?
every week.
Perfect. So really looking forward next week as well.
Okay, cool. Let's continue. Anything else you want to add there, Julius, so that we can spend the last 30 minutes on the notebooks?
That's perfect. Thanks, Matthew.
You can feel free to obviously chime in anything as well you want. Okay, so short-term goals. I think a lot of people have left, sadly, in the call. But aside that, sorry for talking a lot about 1.0. Okay, so the short-term goals. I will do that. I just want to highlight that we have raised a design request with the CNCF. I would need to confirm. I know that Andre raised it. I know that we linked them this design doc. Hopefully this is sufficient. Hopefully I need to make sure that we actually, let me just make sure I bring that CNCF service desk. Okay, so hopefully we will get some information back from them soon. Any comments about that, Jenny? The logo, I mean.
No comments here. Nope. Yep, we've submitted that over to Andre, who's working on that. So yeah, thanks. Appreciate it. So
I'm
yeah.
just confirming that the ticket actually was raised. I'm just logging into the portal.
Sure. Do the link? I can send that over.
Yes. So I can't. It's not a link that I can. I'm just. How do I? Yeah. So there we go. I just make sure that I was monitoring it so that I'll see any responses. Yeah. So I can see it. It's the service desk ticket 2,900. But again, I don't think most people have access to that, so I won't link it. But getting you access is something we could do, but I just don't think it's necessary right now because it's really just going to be them coming back, and we'll just make sure that we relay any information to the Slack.
Okay, perfect. That sounds good. In that case, we can continue to what's the word? Like to sync on that every week to just track the progress. Does that sound good to you?
Yeah. Sounds good. And also, they should be able to reach out on so when they ask for people to talk to you, I'm just going to point them to you over the CNCF Slack if that's okay.
Oh, sure. Yeah, no problem.
Cool.
Sounds good.
Then they'll probably want to ask questions, and then you can be our point of contact. Sounds good. Again, I don't know what the CNCF's current staffing is relating to this, so who knows if they have time to do it this week, So
yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, cool. Thanks for everyone's work on the logo. Exciting to have a new logo, hopefully. Obviously, these are just examples that we were giving, but maybe it'll be looking like that or something. Okay, epics. So normally at this point, we would go through the epics for Notebooks 2.0. I think we probably should do that. I don't know, Andy, if we have made any progress on kind of fixing the structure of the epics or...
I have. I'm 1 week away for a proposal, and I'll try to seed you something a day or two in advance, Matthew. I know your time is valuable, but I have a rough spec of stuff. I'd just like to take one. Like I got what I think I like for epics done, but I want to kind of look at features and whatnot. This is not reinventing the wheel or anything. I'm trying to take all the work for everything and make it fit for what we'd call GA, right? A lot of these things are like still remain. This isn't going to shock anybody, but I'd like 1 more week just to kind of review and harden it myself to, have something that I'd like to think runs out to what we would consider GA. So I just kind of got my own personal rough draft finished like this morning before this call. And I just like another day or two to like throw stones at it myself. And then I can do a quick like 5-10 minute overview and get thoughts and then iterate on it from there.
So I will give one update about this kind of meta thing for people on the recording. Since last week, 2 big things have changed. One is that PRs are now automatically labeled with the area that they touch, including, as we were just talking about V1, there's a system in place that will now, if the PR is not is on this repo. It's not about the branch, it's actually about the owners files. So as long as we make sure the owners files are correct with the labeling system for the V1 branch when it gets created, it should be easy to see, hey, this PR is not related to V2. And separately, we have a front end and anything else, so that it's based off what code is edited. So for example, I'll just quickly show so that people can see on the recording how to do it themselves. Right now, we're mostly working the Notebooks 2.0 branch. If you go into workspaces, backend, owners, you'll see that it adds these labels automatically to any PR that changes files under here, which is cool. And similarly, there is a V1, a V2 label. Sorry, there's a V2 label there. There we go. Okay. Other than that, Andy, what is going to change? Is anything significant, or we don't know yet specifically?
No, I think it's like I said, it's more so, not looking at just like, kind of as you started to in the working group notes, start to say, here's what we want to do for August, and, kind of like laying out. I'm trying to take everything we've discussed from working group notes and design doc to try to present like a very sequential order of everything we want to take up to GA. And so it's not really like changing any process. It's trying to present like the full picture, so we have a lot better idea, and hopefully will help you, Matthew, as we say, hey, we have some PRs to review. It's like, are there PRs before? You know what I mean? This should give us like a stack ranked view of work to kind of prevent people from getting too far ahead. And, so anyways, it'll make a lot more sense next week, but this is not like epics, features, tasks, all that stuff. How we work is not changing at all. It's just trying to get the full picture laid out. So hopefully, people can better understand where we are and, where we have to go.
And so you will need the labeling, like, isn't there a GitHub Actions PR somewhere in here?
Yes.
So did that end up getting rebased so that we have this, or is this not ready yet?
Yeah. So I had like one comment here, but like, so, and I can give those in my personal updates as well. But yeah, the two other ones that are related to this, I did make changes on, so we can talk about those later as time allows.
Cool. So I guess right now we don't really have the epics to specifically go through then, other than we will go through maybe the areas, but just as an overview of the current overview of tasks, I guess we're trying to close out the stuff from May, which is a while ago now. I don't know if there was anything else that's pending here before we say this is done.
Yeah, so this one is just the start, stop, and the secrets work. And start, stop, I have fixed up based on our discussions. There was one question I had on validation that didn't have a good pre-existing pattern that we can talk about later. I DM'd you. I know you're busy.
But isn't that
but
merged?
the start, stop API, no, because we had redone the changed. I had two different endpoints and you wanted it as a single endpoint. I need to update the PR description itself, but I've done all of the changes. I just had a validation question.
Okay, cool.
And so, but I mean, regardless of the answer of that, we sync for 5 minutes. It'll take me 5 or 10 minutes to incorporate that feedback. Everything else about getting a single endpoint
publicly is that this will be done in then, probably. Or
yes, I think it's that close. Yes.
It'll definitely done before the next meeting, as long as we get the secrets thing merged. Okay.
Yes.
That sounds good. Now, June. So obviously June is also last month, but this is actually mostly done, honestly. This is actually mostly done.
Yes, you merged the
not though. I mean, yeah, this is really not. This is the only one that's like.
And the third one, right? That's the part which I'm working on.
Yeah, that I mean, what I was probably saying is that these need to just move into. I mean, I guess we can pretend like we're marching forward and going back the other ones. So like, yeah, okay. Anyway, this one is done. Obviously, people need to connect to it.
Right.
Yeah. This one, which is there's now a REST API to do it. So now I guess we need to. So the ones we need to be keeping on track over these ones, which is like listing the getting at least the initial web pages for. Well, I guess they've already got those, right? initial pages. But
yeah, I think that one we can say, at least from a phase one, we can say that one. Well, we have the Counts PR that I think is ready for your final review. That it was really just restructuring stuff. There wasn't any functional things. You wanted the schema to be slightly different, and that has been done. So I think we can say in good faith, like, that initial pass is good, and we can always iterate next on that. So I think there's enough there to kind of clean that up. And part of the epic rework I'm doing is trying to scope these a lot smaller, and like be but anyways, yeah, I think we're close there.
Okay, and then this comes to our last current one, which is the one that's the most related to the thing we were just talking about in 1.0, which is we want to be able to run a Notebooks 2.0. Like, we want to be able to say in a guide, how do you run this from like our steps? Obviously, it won't be working in its current state, but it will be. We need at least to be able to get to the point where you've got a Kubeflow dashboard with auth, Istio, and everything else running in the cluster, and then run the Notebooks v2 controller, UI, and backend in the cluster. And obviously, to do that, we need to containerize all the front end, the component, with other things like that haven't been done. So we'll go through those. I think we won't go through those now. I just want to highlight that. So the goal for the end of this month, and I think we can achieve it, which is separate almost to these other goals, is to be able to deploy Notebooks 2.0. And I do want in that, the main asset is a README. Like, it's literally just there's obviously some actual Docker files, but it's a README under this repo here, in the Notebooks repo, in Notebooks v2 under, I'm okay with it being in the root, but I think honestly, we can just do it in the context of like I think we talked about having some kind of common folder here, or maybe it should be at the root, maybe there's a new folder or something, somewhere where it's like, hey, developing tips, you know what I mean? It's like, how do I do this? Because initially, the only reason you deploy it is to develop it, right? The longer term, obviously, would be, hey, I want to integrate, or other things. Kimonos, feel free to jump in.
Should we use a contributing MD file, which is for anyone that wants to contribute? That's why we have those files in the repos that shows.
So we have a contributing at the root, but this is more about like semantic things. I think we should have like a developers file, like, you know what I mean, and frame it in initially in the context of like developers, because I don't want normal users deploying it yet. So so I think, you know what I mean? It's like we can have. I think what we have realized this now, though, I think, is that we need a folder. I think we do need like a because then also there's two kinds of developers, right? There's us making the apps. Then there's integration people. Like, oh, I'm Apple. I want to use Notebooks 2.0, but I don't care about the rest of Kubeflow. Or I'm whoever, you know what I mean? Like, this is kind of, and everyone else in the world that we want to target to be like, please be like Red Hat, be like Canonical, be like whoever who uses notebooks, but doesn't actually necessarily need to be involved in everything day to day, like that they can plug in, right? That's kind of the goal. Okay. So, as all I'm saying, though, is that those decisions can be made after we've actually got the actual things that are capable to be done. But the end result of the month needs to just be a README somewhere in let's say in a developer folder or in a dev folder. I don't know what we'll call it. Doesn't really matter. I don't think it can be under workspaces because these are like the actual component code. There will be lots of updates in this code, but it's not where the README should live because it's common to all components. And it's like, how do I develop Notebooks 2.0? Because right now our contributing guide does not describe this. And the first step in that is deploy. And then we probably have a folder called deploy. Maybe actually it's this file called dev deployment or something. Like a file, not the folder. Like, there'll be a folder called contributing or something. And then there'll be what do you want to agree on a name for the folder? Is it contributing, or is it like developing, or is it deployment? Is it /deploy? What is it?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it kind of depends. I could see a development folder because I could see a need for other supporting scripts. Like, in theory, maybe once like the tilt stuff spans things, like some of the tilt configs might live there. You know what I mean? So I kind of like the scope of like just development or developing or something, because I feel like we could target that same audience, but in a few different ways.
In the same way that we'd probably have a releasing folder, just like we do for the dashboard repo. So we'd have like releasing and developing or something, maybe. Yeah, developing.
I could get behind that. That seems. I mean, we can always change it, but that seems like it captures the right intent, in my opinion.
And then we can have integrating or something. We have a separate folder for people who are using but not developing. Anyway, and then deploying. Maybe we don't need to have the word ing. Maybe we just go release, deploy, And I think it's probably the best way to do it. We should probably do release, deploy, and I don't know, develop.
If it's gonna be just a markdown file, like why are we thinking about a directory specifically for that?
I think there will need to be scripts. I think that's kind of the thing.
Okay.
Sorry, that was my thought, Harshad, is that there could be some scripts to help there. So then just carving out a folder gives us better future flexibility.
It just prevents things happening in the root, because like otherwise when a normal user sees a script called install, they might be like, oh, that's where you install notebooks from, and they run a script and break their production Kubernetes cluster, right? It's like, or something to that effect. It means that as long as it's in a dev folder, they're probably like, oh, I probably shouldn't run that script, you know? Like, maybe. I don't know. I can't help some people. Okay, anyway, so let's keep going. So anything that we really think is a risk to getting this done by the end of the month, other than not specific, maybe there's some specific tasks, but so other than the work that Kimonos is doing, I think that's the biggest risk, right? That we need to align on the actual repo that we're going to be pointing people towards for the upstream dependencies. And Kimonos, I want to give you 3 notes there, which is the specific deployment steps for that repo, because there'll be a deployment steps for that repo that we ask you to follow probably at a specific version in our repo. We don't want to duplicate how do you install dashboard reference architecture. So have that folder, right, for there. And then the steps there will be have a Kubernetes cluster with these minimum requirements, which will be Istio installed at this version, right? So Istio installation is not going to be included in the dashboard repo. The actual underlying installation is what I'm saying. Cert manager should be installed to at least this version. Those are the 2 things that we'll say to the user. And we should assume that they're there. And then it's on top of that, apply this manifest first. Make sure that everything kind of works, which is to get the gateway for Istio and things like that. And then apply the auth. Because then I want to highlight that there are optional steps, if you know what I mean. Which is like, and because it helps people learn. Again, most people are just going to kubectl apply the whole thing. But like for now, I think it's helpful to have like a dev folder there as well or something. I don't know, right? Maybe not dev, like that's more of a deploy, but yeah.
This follows exactly the discussion also we had with Andre, right? We haven't changed something from that.
No, kind of, yeah. Like Andre, I think was a little bit flaky about, you know, that's what literally what it says here. So like, our steps are going to say these things. Actually, so our steps in Notebooks 2.0 will include the information about how you get the cluster into the initial state, right? In our development guide, which is like create a kind cluster, run kubectl, run cert manager install, run Helm and Istio install, and then would link off to the dashboard folder, which says deploy at this version, and then would say follow those steps because you're deploying the reference architecture. Then with these config changes, because you're only deploying notebooks, like remove the non-notebook config parts, you know what I mean? And then it says install the optional auth manifest, because like remember, we're trying to make it so that the dashboard is comprised of 2 things. A root set of manifests that we hope everyone will use, especially once V2 happens, like the profile controller and auth related things. And then there's the Istio gateway auth stuff, which is like OAuth through procs. So all I'm saying is then that's where we're pointing to the other repo. So all I'm saying is from your perspective, Kimonos, just we need a README in there as well, is kind of what I'm saying, that explains installing. I don't really care where it is, but it's just like, and it should assume that Istio is installed, Step Manager is installed, where the requirements section of the install guide just says Istio version 1 point whatever or later, not running ambient mesh right now. You know what I mean? Like, for example, like not in the future, maybe we can allow that, but you know what I mean? And then just so that it's like clear, if I was a new user, how I would go from an empty Kubernetes cluster to a dashboard 1.11 deployed on it. And then there should be a section which says, hey, what components are you deploying? If you are deploying notebooks, go to this repo. If you are deploying pipeline, go to this repo. But then we'll have an overlay in the manifest, is my, you know what I mean, for those. Because we should split that up as my proposal as well, you know?
Yeah. Oh, let's first get the release for the dashboard out, then
Yes,
moving
of course.
those to the next one. Yeah.
Yeah, because again, that's the first, sorry, you're right. The 1.11 is the first, just getting an existing release with the manifest still being in the manifest repo. Not the,
But we are aligned. That's what I also had in mind for what the dashboard will have for the rest of the optional of the auth gateways, etc.
Yeah, and that's why why Julius is involved. Because I want him to willingly give those manifests that still actually Kimonos and I wrote, but are living in the manifest repo, ironically, But you know what I mean?
And
Yeah.
I think you had agreed also from the call with Andre when we talked about what should be on manifest and all of that those components.
I think there's still some debate there. I think he just is the only reason he's hesitant is because he, again, has observed us ignore that repo from his perspective. You know what I mean? Like, so I think we need to reassure him that we, as Notebooks 2.0, we care about that repo. So that the immense amount of resource being put into Notebooks 2.0, which will only grow as more companies adopt it, is going to be there even for companies who are not directly using the dashboard in their product. They will be using the profile controller. That's the thing that we're going to try and encourage. And they will also be interested in a generic solution to their problem. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of like that it's like, it's not like these open source manifests are not going to be competing with product from Canonical, product from Red Hat. Those products are different. You know what I mean? But the only way that you get new users who want notebooks is by having them able to play around with it locally, and you know what I mean, right? And things like that. So, and those things you don't. Yeah, you agree?
I think that our plan of starting with keeping the momentum up, at least for the fixing the CI, having released in dashboard, is a very good step also for that. So let's stick with that. And yeah, I think
and then because I want to be able to, when I get on stage at KubeCon, because we're going to be talking about Notebooks 2.0 publicly on main stage at KubeCon in North America at the end of the year. Obviously, the main thing we're announcing is the release of Notebooks 2.0, or if we haven't made the release quite yet, it will be, it's coming in, whatever, it'll be close. I then want to be able to say there's two kinds of users that you could be. An end user that just uses a distribution, or an integrator. You know what I mean? Like this is, and I need then a place to point them to be like, hey, because I think the biggest thing that's difficult to integrate Kubeflow right now, everything, not just notebooks, is disentangling the manifests that are actually Kubeflow from the parts that are valuable to the data scientists and AI researchers. It's like Kubeflow Notebooks is valuable for AI researchers. The dashboard is just a thing that they use to get to those other tools. You know what I mean? They do not care about that part of it. They care if it doesn't work. And so this is where I want to be like, hey, everyone in the Kubeflow and Kubernetes industry, let's all agree that Spark Operator is great, that Notebooks is great, that pipelines are, can be improved, but are great. And then we all work together on those pieces, and then the deployment pieces become a reference architecture, but not required. That's kind of what anyway, I think we all agreed on this idea, but I don't know if Julius has internalized that that's the goal yet. I think he still is worried about us not merging PRs. You know what I mean? So, cool. Okay. Anything else you want to add about getting anything you think is at risk to get this? Because again, this is the main thing I want everyone focusing on for, other than the task, which we've already agreed. So obviously, if you if you're already working on a task and these other epics, please don't stop working on them. Just like, we need to make sure that this is a resourced thing, because without this, I'm sure everyone has experienced trying to onboard a new developer to Notebooks 2.0 being like, how do I get the dashboard running? You know what I mean? So yeah. Andy?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I don't want to get into the weeds on this right now, but the two risks I see, not from the dashboard side right now, Matthew, is just time with you to go over the front end container, the front end Docker file. There was some questions that came up after last round of review with you on not exposing kind of that proxy API layer.
And I'm sure that's pretty simple now, right? Because we pretty much just agreed we would not do any OAuth2 proxy in the base image. Only like end users could add their own one if they would like. Because I think there was, sorry, not OAuth2 proxy, sorry, Nginx.
So, but the complexity we have here right now is the front end is only relative paths. So we have no way to inject server port in a production scenario. The way it works locally in the dev mode right now is Webpack spins up a proxy. And so I just wanted to get direction on, should we open up, not making the request relative path in UI or what to do, or use Kubernetes to, fill in the gaps to do a proxy.
So a lot of stuff. So let's discuss this offline. I don't want, so while we do have the nuclear bomb that is Istio, I don't want to push any crazy path rewriting into Istio, because I don't want Istio to be a dependency of notebooks, if you know what I mean.
Yep.
Yeah, Kamonis?
So yeah, so we can take that offline. So that's, I'm sorry, Kamonis, did I cut you off?
Could we also have a small, at least I would be curious, because we were thinking about it from the previous web apps about the prefixes to have dynamic relative URLs and what the server should use, base 8 refs and all of that. If it's the same, If there's
So-
any thread that you can point
so-
me to,
Actually, by the way, there's another thing I just realized, Andy. I won't talk about it on the recording just because it is it's a security related issue with V1. But there is an architectural change that if we had enabled, if we like while we're out here changing the paths and domain names of the front end, not the dashboard, but the front end for notebooks, we can potentially fix a security issue that's very hard to resolve right now with specifically. This is more around how we proxy to the internal notebooks, and it's just related to how browsers, like, it's not a huge security risk right now because as long as you're using notebooks in the way we intended, which was in a somewhat trusted environment. But if you're doing something crazy like publishing on the public internet or something, there are implications to the fact that we currently isolate by path rather than by domain, just because browsers don't see different paths as things which should have different cookies. Sometimes
So that's
they do,
good. We
but-
can pin in that if we have time post recording, or otherwise I'll put up a thread, Kimonos, in Slack to kind of catch you up to that. So that the Docker file
you
for
guys
front
connect,
end.
please. Yeah. So I mean, you can stay on this meeting. If Kimonos, you'll stay for another half an hour. So we're at the 9 a.m. Pacific. So feel free to stay. Other people can stay. Obviously, we will go a little bit over, I think, today. But we always go over. But I'll just give an opportunity for people to raise issues that they have. Oh, that's yesterday. Is anyone blocked by anything that is on the meeting still? That they need to do?
I'm not blocked, but I have a question with respect to the virtual services. What I wanted to know is, like, I've got the virtual service for each workspace. I'm working on that.
Mhm.
I saw in the 291 issue that there was a CRD change we wanted. Can we just talk a little bit about that? Because I was not there on that particular design meeting, but I just wanted to know what was the idea behind having inside the pod template the port IDs and having HTTP proxy per
So I
port.
can answer these questions pretty quickly, I think, because we already wrote up the design doc. So do you want me to just bring it up on the screen and then everyone gets to learn from it as well? I mean, Kimonos, this is kind of related to what we were talking about just now anyway. So I think it's, again, so for other people,
37.
if you have a meeting that needs to go to, please go. Feel free to watch the recording after, or if you have very complicated technical questions, we'll just open this up as like a bit of a recorded office hours, I guess, right now, if everyone's okay with that. Okay.
Maybe I think Charles has a question, right? His hand is up.
We'll do that after. We'll start with yours. Unless you have something else, Charles, which is blocking you. Sorry, do you want to?
Yeah, I was just asking about the workspace kind update, and whether we will have the kind of like JSON schema for the form to render at the moment, and actually
update.
what
For update?
for update, for edit, basically. Like we were discussing what kind of data the UI can submit to the backend, and just want to know if there's any
So the
update on
blocker
that.
there, and so yes, we're gonna the first. I just want to give you a quick update. There is we did merge the create workspace kind,
Right.
which is a YAML, no structure to it.
Mm-hmm.
We will be merging an update workspace, but not workspace kind. And from that, I would suggest that the front end takes some time to step back a little bit and move towards automatic generation of the HTTP client. And obviously we talked about object payload generation for the JavaScript types automatically from our Swagger spec. I think there was some discussion about 3 different options. I think there's like a bit of debate in the JavaScript community around which one you should use to automatically generate. But our goal from the backend perspective is to give you a Swagger that is as close to the reality as possible. So you should be generating your types from there. And so the good thing about the update for Workspace is that while it's less complicated than Workspace kind, and I know you're specifically asking about Workspace update because it does block you a little bit about but while I have a draft PR for the Workspace kind update, I want to get Workspace update merged first because there's complexities. The complexity in doing the update is also there, as well as doing the actual Workspace kind. It introduces another level of complexity because the spec is just really big, But from your perspective, I think if you have front-end developer cycles, I would spend time even just trying to automatically generate from the existing specs a new HTTP REST client. I don't know if this is what I'm not going to tell you to do this, Andy. You're the one who can decide what your engineers do. But what I mean is like, I feel like there's a lot of work there to integrate and rip out the existing client, which will take around the same amount of time as us getting the workspace, probably like a week or two, to getting the workspace update objects, which you could then, because if say I gave you these objects, right, there will probably be, let's say, 1,000 new JavaScript objects that you need to have specs for, and then you're like, well, I have to then build all the stuff to connect them all together. Maybe I should be using the client that's automatically generated, or then I have to go do that. So I think we should focus on getting, even if the spec is wrong, the Swagger is wrong right now, it's not, but like, even if the Swagger is not comprehensive right now, the minimum, and again, I'll try and get in a workspace update as soon as I can because it's so similar, right? That's kind of a workspace update API. That's the thing I'm going to work on today, right? That one. Well, unless someone else yells at me and says something else is more important. but probably that one. So my answer to you is it will come, but it will come in the form of the Swagger spec being a new API that documents all the object payloads that you can update. And then from that, you should be automatically generating the JavaScript types. And then from that, you should be speccing out your front-end update UI, you know? Oh, and if you want to know specifics about the decided design, sorry, I think that maybe was your question as well. Like, how will it look? Okay, so the answer is that you will be sending, there will be two things. You will initiate a get on
the get we already have like
no, but what I'm saying
code
is,
for.
so what's going to happen is the get payload that you get is going to look nothing like the one for the overview page.
Okay.
It's going to be the exact same payload that you would need to send back to do the update.
Okay.
So like, oh, this is the thing I don't think Andy maybe explained. I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong. Pretty much we're going to be, so I'll just answer this question because I think this is the most promising question that it's pretty easy to work around once you see how it works, to implement from the front end. It's just the way we're preventing collisions between multiple calls from the front end is by, so your list workspace kind page, right? That gives you back the details view that you would need to describe the overview stuff, right? Like it includes, I won't bring it up on screen, but it includes what you currently see on the workspace kind page, which is this. V2. I know, Hashab, by the way, I'll come back to you in a second. I'm sorry for
no worries at all. Yeah, I'll be
just to you as well, I guess. But the backend API, not API, it's model. So the model that is returned, so internal models, workspace kinds, this type here, you'll see it first. The structure, well, I guess this is more of a backend code structure thing, but the workspace is going to have funcs read and types read, types write. And so some of the types will be shared, but most of them will be different. And so the current workspace kind, when you do a get, you're probably thinking about this object, right?
Right.
So this is not even close. There is hundreds more root level fields because this is just the minimum you would need to run a workspace create, not the minimum you would need to run updating or managing workspace kinds. Effectively, this is the information required for the workspace spawner UI.
Right.
See? And so there are a lot of other configs like the ones Hashad, ironically, is wanting to talk about, which are completely irrelevant to the workspace spawner because you assume that the admin has configured it correctly. And so for example, I can't show them here because I don't have, it's on my personal branch, but like on my personal unpushed commits yet to my thing. But conservatively, I've got about maybe 20 fields down here, which mirror largely the root, well, under the work pod template section. So there'll be a workspace kind update model.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the elements of that model, and it'll be super clear once you see the workspaces, is going to be generation. So you do a get or whatever the path is. It might be a slightly different path than the existing one. And then you, what you do is you'll get an object, which is that really deeply nested, very complex structure that looks very similar to the workspace kind YAML. And then you use your front-end manipulation system. So you do that initial get, and it has the current state. And it also has a generation, which is like the current version of that spec from the backend's perspective. So if someone else has gone and updated it in the meantime, what you're to do is, sorry, I forgot to say one thing. You get that, you use your nice front end, which you already shown, pretty much what you've shown to some extent, maybe with some changes to paging and whatever else, to update it, maybe adding new options, maybe changing settings, whatever else. And then
Yeah.
at the end, you give like an overview to the user, which is like, here's what you diffed from your existing one. You click, yes, that looks reasonable. That's what I wanted. I'm adding 10 new options. I'm changing deprecation statuses on old options, whatever.
Yeah.
Then you send back the entire payload in the format that you got it, but with the changes that you did. And that becomes the new authoritative state for the entire workspace kind. If the API then rejects it, it could reject it for a couple of reasons. One, because of some very complicated internal validation that was invalid, like you were redirecting in a cycle for a graph, a graph cycle or something. Or it could say, hey, someone else actually beat you to the punch. Please get this API again and then do your own merge conflict diff. You know what I mean? So the front end initially should just reject it and say, refresh your page, start again, right? But long term, we can deal with a YAML diff or whatever, something. And then you can then highlight to the user, because a lot of merges will be resolvable. You know what I mean? Like that's.
I got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's 3 ways it could fail. One is that something about the actual payload was incorrect. Another is, and that's one, yeah. Another one is that something about the current state of the cluster invalidates your current change request. So like you're removing an option that is in use, right? All of these error payloads will be nicely structured for you as types, which is good. So you should be able to unpack those. Then another one is that that you had a conflict with yourself or with someone else trying to update it, and so it can't safely apply the update because it knows that you didn't know about something that was already updated before you did the button. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Yep. And then also don't forget that you won't be having weird information in here like, well, actually, no, that's not relevant right now. Anyway, so, and then the last one is that, that's actually all 3. That's all 3. Yeah. I don't think there's any other errors, but, so the intended resolution behavior long-term is if there's an error that's related to the content, highlight that section of the diff and take them back to that page. You know what I mean? If there's an error in the conflict, show them, make another get, remembering what the user had. Effectively, you should probably be storing mutations in a field. You know what I mean? Like, there's 2 options. The first, actually, maybe that's not how I would do it. I would do it like this. I would say, store the result of the first get when the user starts the edit workspace kind page.
Yeah.
Then in a new object, copy the whole deep nested copy that one to a new object.
Yeah.
As the user progresses through the steps, apply any updates.
Yeah. We have the state that would handle that right now.
Yep.
So I guess like, have you how much work has been done in types of like the constructing the structure for
So yeah, that's the
workspace kind
part where,
update?
So that's I get that that's the most important thing for you guys.
Right.
I can give you some hints as to what it might look like, but because I want to first do the work, the reason I want to do workspace first is because that generation conflict thing is also going to be present there as well, right? So, and that's a complicated thing to implement. So I want to implement that in the simpler workspace struct first. You know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
And so from your answer, the way it will look is quite different to this. That's all I'm trying to highlight.
Okay.
So,
okay.
It's going to look, but it won't directly map the YAML either. It will be quite different to the YAML as well, just because. So what I'm saying is you shouldn't be like, while there is something to be gained by going and looking at the CRD.
Yeah.
I would avoid thinking too much about it. I would instead focus on, once I give you the workspace update, I guess you could help with that, right?
Yeah.
Yep. And then, because you'll be implementing the same conflict resolution there. And then separately, because you probably want to make some common conflict resolution systems, and then also focusing on generation automatically. Okay. And then, I think we may have lost Kimonos. I'm sorry about that. Okay. So, any other questions there? So my answer to you is, as long as we get out of this meeting quickly today, I will work on the workspace update as long as there's no others, which should then give you the ability to learn a bit about how the actual structure will look in the API, not the actual object types. I want you you or someone else, I don't mind if it's you or not, to focus on generating the client using one of those standard tools, which includes the object types and structs as well, because there's going to be
Okay.
so many that you do not want to be doing that manually. And
yeah, we
Yeah.
were exploring some tools for validations and automatic validation and typing
okay, so
for each field.
validation
So
is an interesting one, right? So this is okay. That's actually a good thing we probably do want to talk about. Just not very long, just 1 or 2 minutes. Is so validation to actually know whether the user's requested update is possible to apply is impossible for the front end to do. It's not just like it's actually impossible because it needs to know about the state of the cluster, but it's also impossible because it's just complicated, right? Like there are like and we don't want that logic anywhere other than in the controller. So not even the backend does that validation. The only backend validation that gets done is like sanity checking. Like, did you just forget to send one of the fields?
that's what I mean for like the you should this should be a number, but not be
Yes.
like characters. That's what I really mean by validation at the moment.
And so what's great about that is that will be easy once you see the model because you can just map it directly to the type of the front end. You know what I mean? Of course,
Yes.
we might also, for validation fields that are like, because JavaScript doesn't have like strong requirements on a lot of types. You know what I mean?
The TypeScript we're trying to do we're trying to do pretty
But then how do
strong
you do,
tests,
but you need to automatically generate the types as well. Are you able to do that? Or is that something that we need to do in the Swagger?
we are not doing that right now.
Like what I'm saying
at
is
the
maybe we
moment.
could add a metadata to the Swagger that you could then do an if statement on for certain fields, you know?
Yeah, we can explore that.
Anyway, so that's what I'm saying. Getting
yeah.
that workflow and then connecting the back end and the front end is probably the most important thing. I don't know if that's your task though. So like I'm gonna let Andy up. So any other questions there? I do want to move on to Hashad's question because
Yeah, let's move on to that because I think I have enough information from that from your answer already.
anyone else got any questions about how the updating of APIs will work? Monas is welcome as well. Say hi. Yes, no. Okay, cool. I guess you're lacking a bit of context. Okay, so okay, so Hashad, your piece. Are you still there?
Yeah. So in that, like if you scroll a little bit, you see the CRD part there. That's the new inclusion, right? At the below, you
Oh,
see.
sorry.
Yeah. Here you mentioned like to include ports, and each port would be like getting the information from the image config, right? Based on that, is the intention here why we have these ports is because like there could be different kind of images, and images can have different types of port, and that's the reason why it came here.
Yep. So of course there'll need to be some validation on the controller side relating to the IDs and things. But what happened? Actually, maybe not. I don't really mind if there is or not. I think it's more that the other way around needs to be validated, which is like, you can have an ID. So first off, what this is in the workspace kind spec, right? So this is the original one. Let me go to the actual current one. So I'll just briefly show this for people so they know what I'm talking about. And this is another thing that the front end will have to deal with complicated validation issues, which anyway, okay. Okay, so the config we're in the wrong one. We're under control. Oh no, samples. This one. Okay, so virtual services for reference is how you, again, right now we're doing virtual service only, but there'll be HTTP paths as well. I know that Kimonos cares about that, which is the gateway API. But in the short term, we're just implementing virtual services first. And then it will be an if statement flag, just like you were saying, but we have to agree. Yeah. Okay. And so what happens is to actually use the, so what does a workspace need to run? It needs an image and a pod config. The actual pod config is largely irrelevant to the routing because it's about the spec of the pod. The part that actually deals with networking is the image. So under image config, so this is an option. Remember, this is an option that you see in the dropdown or in the not dropdown. It's actually much more complicated than that in the spawner. But like in the grid Amazon cart selector style view, you end up with how you select an image now is not typing an image anymore. It's selecting an option that could have its own redirects and other things and labels and things, but it also has these. So image pull policy is pretty straightforward, but ports, because now an image is allowed to serve multiple endpoints. It could serve on different ports because TCP, obviously port isolation is the thing. And now from the user perspective, though, they're still only talking to port 443 under HTTPS certs. Of course, in the future, they'll also support other kinds of things like SSH, like, oh, this container has an SSH port. So this does connect back to your task, Hashad, but I just wanted to highlight this is why port IDs matter. So what's going to happen is that some of the parts that are most important for you to implement in addition to understanding the connection. So this port ID Jupyter Lab, this is a list, right? This is saying that this image contains a port that should be displayed to the user as Jupyter Lab.
Yeah.
At this port on its container with the protocol HTTP it's listening on, not HTTPS, HTTP. And then this ID here is the one that corresponds to the one that you just talked about, which is now under workspace kinds, which currently doesn't. So if I duplicate this tab and I go to virtual service or wherever it is, request headers, right? So we're adding a new option down here, which is like, so these are now done per port, right? And so the way that we identify them is by the port ID. And now under pod template, we have a new section called ports rather than HTTP proxy, because there will be different kinds of ports that we need to support for SSHing and other things. So, and so from the virtual service perspective, virtual service is operated at L7. SSH operates at L4, right? SSH is an L7, or no, maybe it's not L7, but you know, I don't know in particular what it is, but it's an application layer protocol. So it uses TCP. So from a routing perspective, the only ones that you care about are the HTTP ones right now, because they're the only ones that exist. But so from your perspective, what you'll do is adding a new ports thing. And now, so the question then becomes, do you have a specific question? Or the question, obviously in my mind, the question becomes, well, how do I validate this, you know?
Yeah, for me, the question was also like if we were only supporting the HTTP one, right? So once we have that, the only reason we have that port ID there is to map it
to one of potentially, let's say Jupyter, VS Code, and RStudio are all running in the same notebook container, right? Like it's more like they could have different requirements for request headers and for path prefix removal, you know, relative paths. This is what we're saying about injecting complicated.
So are you saying like in a workspace kind, in an image config, there could be one image having Jupyter Lab, another could be VS Code in the same?
Both at the same. So both a workspace kind could contain two different kinds of IDEs, but even more than that, a single image could contain multiple kinds of IDEs. Because if you remember that the list element, which I'm trying to find down here, is ports for each individual image is a list.
Right.
And then the most obvious one, I think, is going to be SSH and HTTP, right? But that's obviously not right now. Like, but you know, a lot of local development is much easier if you can SSH into the pod, for example.
Got it.
But,
so just some specific questions. Like I think this I got sorted out like already in my code. The only thing, so first question, should I create a separate PR for virtual service? And first, should I create another separate PR for updating the CRDs with the port change? Or would you like to have
so they need to be that
was my, because
well, the port change would need to happen first. So they either need to happen at the same time or the port change needs to happen first. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. Do you need a separate
I think
PR?
my proposal would be, it depends on, so there could be a lot more code than I think you realize in the port CRD change.
Yeah, that's why I feel like it should be a separate PR. That's why I wanted to ask.
The current state of the controller is that it works. So I think it would be a pretty significant regression to introduce a section of the CRD that is not used.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, I'm happy to pair with you a little bit once, but I need you to create a PR first. You know what I mean? So that like, it's like, we're going to like you're going to get harsh criticism on the first run. It's just going to be, right? And so there's going to be a round of iteration on it. And the reason for that is because you're probably not even thinking correctly about how to do validation, for example. You may not have even seen how we do validation in the controller. So specifically here, what's going to have to happen, for example, is like my kind of intuition of what the validation should be minimum is no image config should ever reference a non-defined port in the workspace kind, right?
So you're saying here, if they haven't put the port ID here.
If I try to add a new workspace image config, an image config, and it talks about an ID that is not defined, it should fail. The workspace kind should be invalid. It's in an invalid state.
So
And
you're
then,
saying
yes, and then
check the
another
image.
invalid, yeah, you got it, yeah.
Mhm.
And then another one is that if I try and define two different port IDs with the same ID but different protocols, that should also fail.
Right.
Well,
Okay.
not with only HTTP right now, but you know what I mean. Because, like, for example, it's the ID that identifies it, not the port number, right? So two different containers can use the same port number for protocols that are not the same. But this,
Right.
yeah.
Okay, I got
And
it.
also, by the way, I just realized something. We can move display name probably into here.
The thing is, this ports is immutable, right? Technically, if they want, they they can omit it out, right?
No, mutable means changeable after creation.
Yeah, absolutely. But today in the HTTP proxy is like optional in today's CRD, which is existing.
Yes, so
And
this
if
will
I'm
no
going
longer
to,
be, yes.
oh, okay, that's what I wanted to confirm.
So what I'm
Okay.
saying is that it will be mutable only so much as you create a valid. So in the case that you have no image configs defined, you can have it be empty, right? It's allowed to be empty. But as soon as you have a single image config that references a port, again, also don't forget this is under pod template. So for a workspace kind that doesn't use pod template, it won't be relevant. But
Yeah.
but obviously you don't need to do that because we only have one kind right now. But yeah. So there's a lot of validation discussion that needs to take place. But the minimum I think is just to like get the CRD in, you know what I mean, and have a. So this is I agree. This is a debate for you because we're not okay.
So what I did right now
Mhm.
is what I've done till now is I've not considered the CRD part. I got the virtual service
with
as
the
it is,
existing,
with
the
existing.
Yes.
Yeah. And now that's why I did not open the PR for the virtual service yet. And now what I'll do is I'll get the CRD changes and edit my virtual service changes.
Yeah, because I think the other one's going to be more, I think the port config will be more complicated to than rebasing your virtual service. I agree.
Yeah, that's
But
why
but I think raising a virtual service PR might, well, again, a lot of the feedback.
Yeah, that's why I was like, I'll just do like parallelly change both of them and then open the CRD one because I understand that's the one first we want to get. But I'll open them parallelly so that we can at
But
least
yeah,
get
please
reviews.
just try and get something out there quickly because I think it's exceedingly, I mean,
So the virtual
prove me
service,
wrong, obviously, but like,
yeah.
I think it's like unlikely you'll be able to create a PR that's acceptable or even really close to acceptable without feedback. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying. Like, it's more like, it's not that it's that you just don't understand our vision. You know what I mean? It's not about you specifically. Yeah.
No, yeah, absolutely. So I'll get this. I think I now have an idea what to do. I'll open the virtual service first just to get your feedbacks. And
Sure, yeah.
of course, that's not going to merge till we have the CID one. So yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah, makes sense. And so yeah, validation. So the things for the CID one,
yeah,
I think are adding the type, obviously, making sure that the backend doesn't freak out when you change it as well.
Yeah.
Don't make updates to the backend, just let it fail for now. And then actually it won't fail until my piece gets added anyway, so it doesn't matter. But that we were just talking about earlier on. And then focus on making, so you know where the validation code is, you've kind of explored it, right?
Yeah, I'm exploring a lot of these things. So
I look, by the way, just as a side note, there's this driving desire when you look at the validation code to move it to a different structure. And I know that it seems logical, but like one where you have, what about if we just applied a validation function to each element of this spec? You know what I mean? And then nestedly called them. The problem is that doesn't work because the types of validations are really complex and cross-reaching. So you need to have the entire spec often to validate any of it.
Right.
So you can't validate a works, for example, in this exact case, I cannot know whether that image config is valid unless I've looked at the available port IDs.
Okay. I see the point.
So I do think that we should probably also put display name in a spawner section up in the ports, probably. I'm kind of fine with it being different. I'm okay with. This is a debate to have. So
This display name only shows up in the service, right?
This is going to be duplicated on every single one. You know what I mean? For a lot of things.
Yeah.
But it's like it's such a short display name is limited to a very short series of strings anyway. So I don't know. Debate later, I guess. But it's not that difficult to change that.
Thank you, Matthew. I think I have relevant information. I'll get the pieces out so that you can review and give me feedback, and I keep iterating on it.
Yep, cool. And yeah, especially the first part would be interesting to understand if you've understood the virtual services, even remember. I don't know
I
if you,
think I have the code. I'll just open the pull request today, tomorrow. And
yeah, and we can get it. Like, 'cause if you've completely misunderstood virtual services, that's also helpful to give you context. I don't know if you have.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But good. Thank you so much for your work. I'm excited because I want to get you to the point where you could approve PRs into the controller as well. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for the time. Yeah.
Awesome. Any other questions about this stuff before we move on?
Nothing as of now. I think I just need to open the pull request to get your feedbacks. That's the
cool. Okay. And I think, Andy, do we have questions, or did other people have things they want to ask?
Yeah, I'd let other people go and then they can drop, and then hopefully I just have like 10, 15 minutes to rapid fire a couple clarity points, Matthew, and we'll be good. And I'll free you up this afternoon to do your stuff.
Okay. Anyone?
So, Jenny, Kyle, Charles, anything else on your end? Otherwise, you guys can probably feel free to drop if you want. Not that you have to.
But yeah, it's just going to be us reviewing a PR, I think. But that's fine. Okay, cool. Let's keep going. So again, I want to. So obviously, my goal is to unblock whatever is currently blocking. So the tilt PR is one of them, obviously, but it's not really blocking. And
I haven't had time yet to go back and do what you asked on that one yet. So that one's okay. I think the first one, hopefully just in order of ease, if we pull up the sorry, I'm trying to find my notes, but it was the counts PR, which was really updated? Just yes. It's back 3 something. Yeah, sorry, yeah, it's that one right there, yeah. And so here this includes the workspace, what do we call it? Cluster metrics. So if you probably just look at the files change, because these are all small changes, I just wanted to make sure, like last time you'd reviewed, you said functionally it was okay. We wanted to introduce this cluster metrics naming, and then just added to do as a reminder. But I mean, we don't need to go into the.
We can if
that comment.
What is it?
So this is the range val copy thing, right? And like how much, you know what I mean? I was using this more of just as a, instruction discussion point of like, this probably doesn't matter here. But
so the actual Go linter should be warning us. The problem is that I didn't fix. So effectively I turned off this. It's like there's a heuristic warning for this exact check in Go 1.19 or whatever, 22, I don't even know, which added a change in the behavior of ranging over slices to actually copy. If you index copy like this is actually this particular form of a slice array, a looping iteration is actually a copy. So every single object, this is no longer a point that, well, unless it is a pointer, it will, which in the case that it's a pointer, obviously it will be a pointer still, but to the same memory address, obviously. But in the case that it is an actual struct or other actual memory big object, it copies it. The linter that I disabled because I'm loop and I at the time when I did it, I was just like, I was fighting the linter and I just wanted to get stuff merged. There's a heuristic in it which says if the object could ever be more than 1 megabyte of memory, it says this is invalid. Like you shouldn't be doing it this way. And it instead says you should, because the problem is that I didn't understand what it was actually saying. What it says, you should loop over one of these, which is index, and then index it out yourself and do the copy.
So my comment here is, right, in doing that is exposing this as a pointer when really this is just a like read-only field, right? Exposing it as a pointer means someone in the future could accidentally change this value, which is very unlikely, but we probably wouldn't want. But then I have this avoid copy less readable that, just iterates directly on the index, although the code is slightly less elegant. I didn't know if you had like.
So where are you calling build options map? You might already be protected by some code I wrote earlier. Where is this being called and what on?
So this is called at the top of the function to just kind of like build the map to inject
so
into.
So you should, yeah. So because you're just passing the status. Interesting. Yeah, so this function should be safe. That's what I'm saying. This should never mutate the object unless in the same way that we're kind of protecting it here. Because like this object is often called on things which are cached, which is fine.
Okay.
It's not a big problem, but like it's not really a very realistic problem. But it's like this is mainly around tests in cases like that where someone is accidentally doing something they didn't. It's mainly for tests, honestly. Like yeah.
So then if we go back to the comment, then just kind of iterating over, like, so this first
This is
avoid copy.
Well, no.
Okay. So well,
This is,
yeah. Yes. So I guess if we really wanted to avoid the range val copy here, like the avoid copy readable of just getting a pointer to that actual index element, would that be how you would do that? Or like, I was just, like I said, it's pedantic in the context of this, but it sets a nice precedent in the future for these types of situations where it matters in terms of.
So wait, what are you worried about here?
I'm just like how, if we switch this to do the index and operate on the index,
why would you want to do that? You don't have to do that.
Okay, so just leave this code as is in this case.
Because like this is safe already. Like this is just inherently safe. Because like,
but I mean, but if we turn the range val copy go critic check on, it will flag this, right? I guess that was my.
I don't think it will. This is.
Okay.
I don't think this could ever be more than a megabyte. So there's no realistic path for this being more than a megabyte. I mean, because this is the individual elements can't. Maybe the overall might, but like, well, definitely it can't for a number of reasons. Whatever is the easiest to read is what I'm saying. This is just a go style question, but
okay. So I'm totally fine with that then. So yeah. So I guess then here, it's like, so we refactored. So now stuff is nested under a cluster metrics.
The thing that I would be more concerned about is this consistently ordered? I guess it doesn't matter because it's a map, but
it's a map. Yes.
Did we agree on a map being the structure? I don't remember actually what we talked about.
Well, this is really just a lookup map. So then we go to actually build the things because we're including this cluster metric attribute in line to the object. It's just like when we're building that object, we can just get that specific element because this is decoupled from the status versus the workspaces. Or I mean the image config and image config or pod config, whatever it is, values.
And then the metrics, are we just taking the entire metric, or I guess you're just being able to unpack it there. Effectively, you're just making a map lookup version of it. Yeah, okay.
Right. Yes. Just to get what is there, right? And so
wait, is it?
So yeah. So
wait, it's a result map though. It's to int 30. Oh, okay. This is actually not metrics so much as it's counts, right? But yeah.
Right now it is. Yes, it could always, if we have more, it would, that would need to change. But then, basically you have your cluster metrics, which is omit empty everywhere, as we discussed. And we added these to-do comments in here talking about in the future, if and when namespace metrics come out, there's obviously interplay in the affected areas.
Oh, sounds good. That can be probably merged as long as it's valid then.
Yeah, so that's like been tested and verified, but I just wanted to double check to make sure that
do we want to merge this then? Are we aiming to merge this today then?
It's not like it's ready to go, so that helps us close out an earlier story. But you know what I mean. If you want like to re-review it in isolation, that's fine. But I think it's it's tested and ready to go.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. I guess this is for the back end though. Okay, interesting. Yeah, okay. It's fine, yeah. Yeah, this is probably fine. Okay, cool.
Next one then is the front end container one. And again, if it's like we need to take this offline, that's okay. But like I said, this was around the whole relative pathing, and if we don't do that API proxy in Nginx, I'm just not sure where we want to land on this, and I just wanted more acceptance criteria before like sending someone down a wrong path. These are all like old comments because this has been re-reviewed multiple times. So really it comes down to the conversation me and you had last week, because we have that proxy block in the Nginx config that you said we didn't want to be exposing that. And then as I started to look into this more, I didn't see how we could actually get front end to talk to back end, or there's not that we can't do it, but there are many other options and I wasn't sure what we wanted.
Has anything changed in the PR or not?
No.
Okay. So is there like a question specifically?
It's a question that I have as I started to research to help this developer out. So it's just like fundamentally the front end, and when you build for quote unquote production mode, in the absence of Webpack, there is no proxy there, and it doesn't take host port protocol type environment variables to like directly connect to something. And so it was like, does something else need to build a proxy? Do we want to allow specifying protocol host port to have front end kind of directly talk to back end? Do we want to do,
So
like you said,
host
something
port though, like, so obviously Nginx in this case is being used as the server of HTTP in JavaScript. So obviously
Yes.
it doesn't really, it can be hard coded, the port that it's listing on, but like the only part that you're asking about is like the
So
path.
sorry, for how the front end talks to the back end. I don't understand how we want that to work.
The front end doesn't talk to the
Where-
back end. That's why. The user does. See what I mean? Like the front end tells the user to take a request to the back end. The front end is JavaScript that runs in the user browser.
Yes.
The only goal of the front end's container is to get that JavaScript to be in the user's browser and running. And I'll agree. There is there's a one. I think we should hard code the port to whatever something, but in the container. But the only question is the path that it's under, right? Which is
So sorry, I'm still confused here, right? So if I was running this locally, all right, the front
container, you mean.
end, if I was running the front end and back end just as separate processes in terminal, the back end has a Webpack proxy that says you can find the back end at localhost 4000. Okay, in dev mode, right? Now, when we go to production, at some point there needs to be something saying, here's the host and port that the back end lives on where you'll get your data.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, but I'm not quite sure what you mean. That config is more of a question for the client, right? It's like it's effectively like it's like for the example of the create or update workspace. Like let's think about the API calls that happen when we start when we go to the browser. Like the user opens up the notebooks tab of the dashboard. Of course, they get routed from the whatever towards this container, right? This one that we're about to create here. And this first list is the list of workspaces, right? Let's say. And so how did the actual front end create that list of workspaces? Well, it's a bunch of JavaScript code and HTML code and CSS code that when I click load, when I refresh the page, the first request is obviously to get the HTTP and JavaScript code. Once that's all there, it starts running. What is it actually doing to start to do the final page print, page load? One of the dependencies that blocks the rendering of the page is a get on the backend for current workspaces in a JavaScript object, like JSON API call, which is then used by the front end's other JavaScript to unpack into the view of the code. From a request perspective, we can just kind of assume that it's always going to be under notebooks/API or something. You know what I mean? Which is how it's on every other component or workspaces/API.
But I'm sorry, I'm not communicating well. Like at some point, like you need the host name of the backend.
No, it should be just the same. The assumption is that it should be the exact same as what's serving you the front end. It's just on a different path. Like effectively, it's like the implied default that the front end behaves for all the other front end apps is that it's like you are on kubeflow.mycompany.com, right? /dashboard. Sorry, not /dashboard. / notebooks, or in our case, maybe workspaces. And then if I go to that path, there is another secret path behind the scenes called /API that is actually, or /v1 or whatever.
But like we need to like write what code does that, right? Exposes these two different, like, where does that logic? I guess that's what
So
I'm
it
like
happens
hung
in
up
two
on.
different ways. In production, it happens because there's another container running on the cluster with the same network routing from the user, however the user is getting into the cluster, on just two different paths. Like, it's a virtual service. In that case, it's a virtual service for production. Like, it's Istio. Or
okay, but I thought you just said we didn't want to tie this to Istio.
No,
I guess
but
that's
like,
so like that.
so it's an Istio virtual service, which again, the generic solution to that is HTTP Path Gateway API. So it's still whatever is implementing your ingress to the cluster, whatever L7, like there is an L7 proxy. Kubeflow has a dependency on an L7 proxy.
Okay.
The question is whether it is Istio or another product, but the generic API, there's it's the same pharmaceutical. It's not the same pharmaceutical. You know what I mean? It's like the generic version is we have hard dependency. We have a hard option, which is straight up just use Istio virtual services because it's just legacy, what's already there. And then there's another option, which is the generic option, which is the manifest, not the controller in this case, will create a virtual service, an HTTP path, which is this. Like it's, well, that's great. HTTP route, I take that back. We'll create this as the generic alternative, which is just, and Istio can also interpret these as well, but any other thing as well. But there's an L7 proxy there. Now, the question then becomes, how do I develop it then? Well, Webpack, right? Webpack also is capable of doing this exact same thing, just locally, so that because then there doesn't even need to be a config on the front end. Well, there can be, like if I think do we do it right now on the front end?
And for the development mode, yes, Webpack has this proxy. This is in place. I was thinking more so when we're looking at this Docker file containerization, that's really more so the production use case. And so this was the discussion I wanted to have of like, what is the actual end state we're trying to build here? So then, like, I guess like the takeaway here then is it is just not a viable setup to run the Docker files for front end and back end and naively expect them to work.
Well, why would you ever want to run a Docker file not on the cluster? You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah. No, I mean, that's like very, I mean, that's what I was trying to.
You could hack it and just tell Webpack to not start the local version of it and then instead route to a local path. Like that's obviously you could do that, but it doesn't make any sense. Just run it in the cluster. I mean, you're either running it in dev mode or you're running it in the cluster. And
and so in the cluster, we'll use the existing dependencies of Kubeflow for this stuff to get stitched together.
Virtual service. Yeah. It's a service mesh, right?
Yes.
Well, not service mesh, but it's an L7 proxy is what we're getting. But like it's, yeah. And also the reason for this is on auth, right? It's effectively that you should trust that whatever is getting you there is making sure that you were allowed to get there and authenticating you. And then authorization is done by the backend, obviously, which we've already showed, right?
Okay, so then I think my approach here is going to be, I will go back with this developer with clear acceptance criteria for this Docker file. We can just, I mean, once they
You're
make
just serving
the changes,
the HTTP.
we can just merge this Docker file because it in and of itself isn't going to allow us to connect to a backend. But it's the follow-up PR that the developer's already working on, the workload manifest stuff. That's where we need to make sure these routes and connections happen.
The front-end manifests, yeah. The front-end manifests and the back-end manifests are the two that enable this to run in production, yes. And that's also, now you see why I was saying, like, to get to the end of deploying, that we have a hard dependency on the dashboard repo, or at least having so now it's like, because now one of the first steps is install Istio, install Cert Manager, then install Istio, then install our Kubeflow specific gateway, then install the authentication system for the gateway. And again, at every point we're saying, hey, you could swap these out for your own thing. Of course, you won't have a choice but to use Istio initially, but we're going to work on the whole of Kubeflow not requiring that, with the first thing not requiring that being dashboard. Right.
Perfect. Okay, so I will get this, so we know everything we need to get the Docker file cleaned up. I understand acceptance criteria for the manifest, which will be a fast follow PR, so we are good there.
Assume that the implied default is whatever path. So my recommendation is that there's two hard-coded implied default paths, which is root host / workspaces. That gives you the list. Workspaces. Wait, how are we going to do this? What's our path? What's our path prefix? We haven't really agreed on this yet.
It's like,
for example, the current Jupyter one goes the way you list your HTTP list, because like in the same way that pipelines has sub pages, right? So if we go to I remember what pipelines has. Yeah, it just has pipelines / various things, I think, right? Like, well, yeah, that's actually, I know how we can get there. We can just go to manifest pretty easily. It's been a while since I just touched that piece. Is pipelines. Oh god, I forgot about this mess. Oh, it's probably that. No, it's an overlay. And platform agnostic multi-user. And then where does this end up? This goes base installs multi-user. Okay. Oh, base meta. Okay, metadata is interesting. They must have changed a lot of this random crap recently. Okay. Installs multi-user. They've changed this a lot. Wow, I'm a bit worried about that. Virtual service is done here. There's one here. Oh, I guess it doesn't matter because it gets routed in the front end. Yeah, that's actually fine. Yeah, that's perfect. So yeah, that makes total sense. Yeah. So what should happen is that the path that you, yeah, so there only should be one virtual service for the front end. It should point you towards the thing that it's a virtual single page web app, if you know what I mean, in some sense, right? Like that's iframed actually. And so the path that you are at determines what you see from the front end. You know what I mean? Like the front end serves you a, you can do this however you like, but you know, the front end serves you either there's some kind of not proxy, but like, oh, I guess that's the question. Is there a proxy running there? I guess that's the question for you guys to decide in your front end design. I think the current design seems to be it's a single page web app though, right? Like that's with just a lot of paths. Is that it's like you did get delivered the entire JavaScript to do any page, or you dynamically load the page's JavaScript. I guess that's probably the way that it should be done. You know, like that you get a root one that first checks what your host path is, your HTTP path is, and then from this is just how you implement a web framework these days. But it's like the question of like, so all that we're doing from a TCP / HTTP layer perspective is we're trying to get you towards the pod to make the first request. And from there, you will then initiate many other subsequent requests, some to the front end to get other pieces of code and UI elements, and others to get the API. That
yes.
The front end will trigger you to do. Like,
okay.
Yeah.
But no, this is, well, I'll figure, yeah, I mean, I understand the shape of this. I'll work with, Paulo and company to make sure we land on the right thing there.
I mean, presumably, just to confirm, we are already doing this, right? Like that, like the front end in here is already effectively a single page web app, right? To some extent. Or is it not? Is the front end, is there like a Webpack config here?
There is a Webpack config, and maybe, is it in config? I forget where I see that at.
The package, no, it's not. Be under config probably,
And then there's Webpack dev.
It's there, guys. It's still a single Webpack comment, sorry. It's paths resolves. Where's the actual routes?
It's in the proxy something, right?
Maybe that's only under dev.
Proxy is only under dev.
Yeah,
yes.
so effectively all you have is a route from API. So this is fine. Obviously, in production, this path will never get. This path there's no way for the user to ever route themselves here. This path would be the same path as the. So like, probably though, I would recommend that you add a config both here and here, which is /workspaces, because the root path of all workspace related things under the host will be everything in the same way that everything from Kubeflow pipelines is prefixed with pipelines or pipeline. Unfortunately, they have both pipeline and pipelines because someone screwed up and made the API pipeline or one of the, I don't remember which way around it was. They, you know what I mean? Like they get 2 virtual services because they're special. They get 2 routes in a single virtual service. But which we can see actually because we literally just got here. We got pipeline, which is the UI, and then API service? Who knows? Doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter because both of these end up sending you to this place anyway. So it's fine. They actually do proxy their API internally, but we're just not going to do that because that's a bad idea. Okay. Yeah, so all I'm saying is that you should always, like, it doesn't really make sense to ever, even in development, not have prefix / workspaces.
For the backend API, you mean, not for the front end?
Yeah, for the front end, because there's never going to be a time when the user isn't accessing this under, again, actually, it's more complicated than that because they're actually iframed as well, right?
I mean, not right now.
Well, the dashboard will iframe you, is what I'm saying. Like, you'll end up, like, the way this physically works is that the dashboard will be wrapping you, and then the user will still be making the request to the front end, but as an iframe inside of the dashboard.
Okay.
Which I know is a little bit painful, but like it's just how the rest of the UIs work. So unfortunately, so this is also why we have a dependency on that, and why we need to genericize that piece as well. But make it easier to plug in your own dashboard. But again, there'll be a common piece of JavaScript which describes how the state of the, for example, that's how namespace selection works, right? But I've already seen screenshots of like people doing this. Are they not doing this right now? Like with the front end dashboard being involved?
Well, but it's always in dev, like in that dev mode, right? So the Webpack proxy is.
But what's
play.
actually doing the sidebar? How do you end? You are iframing, right? Or are you not?
No, we don't have an iframe there on the.
It makes sense. I guess you've got a development mode, right? I guess that's kind of what's happening.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is something to think about, which is that we would obviously like to explode out the oh, I need to put an enter there. It looks really bad. Okay, whatever. The I can take it. You can't see it. But like effectively, the way that it should work is similar to how when pipelines is served on its own, it has its own sidebar. But when it's served in the context of Kubeflow, you click here, and then it expands. Like if we go to pipelines interfaces, I think, and then because that's their normal, that's their own standalone mode. But in the context of Kubeflow dashboard, you end up with a subsection here, and then the iframe needs to still respect both the dropdown of namespace from the outer Kubeflow dashboard and also the path that is selected. Of course, this can cause sync problems, as we've setting, but a lot of these sync problems are actually just caused because we're jumping between root paths. You know what I mean? Like, so right now you can be in notebooks and then get redirected to volumes, but because notebooks 2.0 is going to also do volumes in its own tab, this will just be gone, right? To use volumes or you'll just be using notebooks, v2 or workspaces. So there'll be a section called like, well, from a UI perspective, who knows how it's structured, but from a, effectively, my expectation is that Kubeflow will have a couple of sections on the sidebar. Workspaces, which will include, you know, workspace kinds, workspace, volumes probably, maybe even jobs like we talked about, like some other things. And then there'll be no tensor boards though. And then there'll be one for Katib and one for Kserve and one for pipelines, and then one for whatever else components eventually get added. But you'd be like click to expand here, and then under here is where you go to that one. And it's a bit confusing, I know. Like, so both need to exist though. A standalone mode can exist, like for development, but this is how we integrate with the dashboard, which is kind of one of the next steps that's going to have to happen, right? Which is to deploy it, which actually is to deploy it. It's a requirement for that, actually. This is complicated. The reason being that what has to happen is that the dashboard is actually the request that the user is making, right? And then the internal dashboard is telling them, hey, there's actually an iframe in this middle of this page here, which actually is on /workspaces. You need to request that as well. And then it is injecting some information that the JavaScript on the inside page can use to determine what namespace is being selected.
Yeah, I just didn't quite understand if this slash workspace prefix should be specific to the environment or should be hard coded in the front end
It
source
can
code.
be hard coded for now. So like other parts of Kubeflow, including existing 1.0, have the ability to configure it, but they do that. But well, not pipelines. Pipelines is a bit of a mess. But in for example, if we go to 1.0, which would be here, this one, components. So like if we look at the Jupyter manifests, so the base deployment, there's a app prefix. This is a user. So for this is the only configs that to be consistent with the other components, you would have so this is something the container needs to have, right? These are the configs, and there'll be default ones. That's fine, but like, or they can be in the code. I don't mind. So the front, effectively, you've got three. Well, actually, interestingly, well, you can have it. Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, so yeah, I don't think there's much use for it right now in the but the backend API, yes, because that's how it unpacks. Like we already literally have these configs in the backend. I'll show you, which is cmd main. Like we literally have these configs, right? Of course, notably we are missing a API path or whatever, not API path, sorry, prefix. No, we are missing it. Okay, we do need to create it. Yes, okay. So effectively to allow you to put it under a different path, but there is no, like, none of the Kubeflow components. Well, that's what I'm saying. You can just set it to empty, but it needs to be a config of both the front end and the back end. The app prefix for the back end obviously will probably be workspace/API.
On singular, right? Workspace.
Let me confirm.
So it's an environment. It's an environment variable that has the default value /workspace.
Where? Oh, sorry.
No, what?
Oh yeah, so like yeah, we're saying
in the Webpack.
Yeah. So effectively, there should be not here. Obviously, this is a Webpack, but like the so the actual JavaScript also doesn't need to, well, yeah, the user doesn't actually, the front end doesn't really need to know anything about who's talking to it, I guess, right? It's user ID or its thing. Its path it does need to know though, probably. So, because otherwise it can't make relative paths safely. But
yeah, right now it just puts /API for every backend call.
Yes, but in the future, obviously, it would be like, which is correct. This is correct. It's just that there's another prefix before both of these. You know what I mean? Which is yeah, and of course it needs to handle the fact that API collide, because every other path will probably be virtual, right? It needs to handle the fact that that would collide with it, obviously. But like, so when you make this request, whether in an iframe or not, you'll get back a piece of JavaScript, which again, you can choose to proxy it internally if you would like in some way, but I don't think that's how it's currently designed, right?
I'm not in production. The proxy is only for development.
Like that's the thing you're actually requesting, right? Well, of course it gets injected with JavaScript, but yes. So my answer to your, sorry, did you have a specific question? So like we need to, this obviously needs to be implemented in, like for reference, if we go back to this old one, Notebooks 1.0, this is actually the front end, right? So if I go with the back end, oh wait, actually I take the back. Sorry, we've combined them in the old world. That's why this config is here, because this config is this one is common to both of them, but this one and this one are only specific to the backend. The backend is like at the moment, we don't have any need for the front end to know who's talking to it. And if it did, it probably should ask it some other way. You know what I mean? Rather than unpacking a user ID header, which is being securely validated by other things. Like, but this is just, unfortunately, this is how we have groups as well, actually, though. So that's one thing we did do in V2, is that user ID header and groups header are now available, which is going to be the standard for every component of Kubeflow. But, and this is how we're doing validation to say, is the person who's currently requesting the API even allowed to create a Kubeflow workspace? In that namespace.
So I guess, so sorry, I'm still, I could probably follow up later. But since front end and back end are split for us, do we actually need two different entries in the virtual service then? Or just front end back end are each registering their own virtual service to make this work?
Yeah, so the way it would have to work is that there'll be either one
or HTTP route. I said virtual service.
Yeah,
I meant
they're both. Like the you could do either. It really doesn't matter. But because the manifests are probably easier to do separately, you know, to have two separate manifest folders, it's probably easier to just have two virtual services, right? They can just select the same gateway on a different path.
Right. Okay.
Like, so yeah, you have a virtual service which comes over here. For example, this is the V1 virtual service, right? So obviously everything /Jupyter goes to the existing one because both the backend and the front end exist on the same Docker file. Like this, the Docker file here copies both the front end and back end into the same thing, and then uses Unicorn apparently to serve it. And the same idea here, except there'll just be a prefix for workspaces, which goes the implied default, and then the more specific workspaces /API goes to the existing. Sorry, goes to the backend.
Goes to the backend. Okay, cool, got it. Okay,
like the more specific match obviously is hit first. So
is the one, yeah. Okay, perfect. Okay, I understand that now. Thank you for clarity. So, like I said, I will get the Docker file PR cleaned up to just remove that proxying logic, and that should be good. But that developer's based in Israel, so that won't be until next, like early next week. But then to make the manifests,
this is where I'm coming back to. You're going to struggle without having steps to deploy Istio, the dashboard.
Yeah, sorry. So we have another developer right now, like actively ramping up the central dashboard to get that working to kind of like cross-train the team. So like that we'll need to get basic understanding.
Is going to help a lot because me and Kumanis over the last, I don't even know what to think about how many years now, built that thing, and it's but there is very few people, even me, who remember. I don't remember exactly the method by which the client-side library works, because effectively you have this path happening that is a piece of JavaScript that hooks on DOM content load. It sends these events which can be listened to within the code. So these need to replace your outer, and effectively having your sidebar is great, the one that we have already, because it can be used for development purposes. But it needs to also not accidentally be a security risk as well if we do security kind of related things. But it's, yeah, I don't know.
Okay, so no, that's good. Now, so that's good. So I completely appreciate then. I'm about to point your attention then to the works, the back end work like manifest PR, which I like, you know, in the greater scheme of things, we really probably want to test this like with the front end and all of this other boilerplate setup. But I did have some questions if we could kind of scan through just on some of your thoughts, as we don't really have Notebooks 2.0 workloads defined yet, in terms of any like stylistic or like implementation preferences on your end. It's the third one down, define KDS workload manifest. So like one, the developer was defining a namespace, which I don't, if you would probably go to files change. Yeah, I've commented on all these, but I just wanted to get your thoughts. Like this, the make file's not that interesting because it's literally just deploy, undeploy. The name of this thing, right? NBV2 backend. Like, I don't want to get too hung up. I was saying workspaces backend as a name, but you know what I mean? Like, I don't really care.
So there's two options. The first is more similar to how the controller works, which is that everything is just called controller or front end, and then users customize to inject the prefix to whatever the hell the user wants. Because we know, so the main concern is making sure we do not collide with other parts of Kubeflow, because I'm not particularly concerned with colliding with other user apps because they shouldn't be installing them in this namespace. There's the other discussion, which is that the namespace for workspaces should not be Kubeflow. It should be Kubeflow-workspaces.
Okay, so I had a different question. The namespace was like.
So we're not going to be using
that...
the so we need to be customizable. You should be able to install Kubeflow workspaces in any namespace you like. So that means that we need to handle that. Of course, the actual apps don't need to know about that, but so right now everything in the old world was installed in Kubeflow, but progressively, and we're pretty much the only thing left. I want the only thing installed in Kubeflow to be the dashboard. Right. Or we even move that out into the Kubeflow dashboard, maybe, because having them in separate namespaces does make things a lot easier. From a security perspective. But from our perspective, I think our implied default, just like trainer is Kubeflow-trainer now, I believe. Let me just verify that. Where's training operator? Okay, so manifest for them are okay. They actually might be installing it in so they actually are installing it in Kubeflow, but we don't need to do that. For some reason they're using the word Kubeflow system. What is happening? Why are they doing that?
Well, but is that just for the manager though, or?
I think that this was a weird thing that Andre tried to do for a while. That was using Kubeflow-system rather than Kubeflow. Now we have 4 fucking namespaces. Great. Okay, sure. That's great. That's fun. Let's. Okay, whatever. I'm not against it. I think that it should just be configurable, right? Like from our perspective, it should be completely irrelevant which namespace the app is in, right? Like it should be, is it Kubeflow? Is it Kubeflow? We should never hard code it. There should be a config in every part of the app, including the backend, if that's relevant. I don't think it is. You know what I mean? Like I don't think the backend needs to care. It should never hard code that it's in Kubeflow like it used to.
Okay,
like
that's the namespace.
That it contains the front end, back end, and controller. Like for example, we already do a lot of testing where the controller runs in the default namespace. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't matter as long as you only run one of them on the cluster. It's fine, right? Like yeah.
So, but I guess so. Okay, so namespace needs to be configurable, and that's just
the implied default. I would suggest. I think we should just make our own namespace. I think it should just be Kubeflow-workspaces.
And even the controller runs in there too, or the controller should.
Especially the controller, yeah. So like, it's more like I think maybe the default should be that. I don't really want it to be Kubeflow. You know what I mean? I just think there's a lot of security risks for it being Kubeflow. But in any case, you should be allowed to install it in Kubeflow if you would like. But it's all, and so then what you do is most of that is configured through customized in. Because effectively, it's like you can't detect what namespace you're in unless you specify an environment variable. So in the off chance that some part of the project needs to know what namespace it's running in, we would just do an upwards API or whatever it's called, downwards API. Yeah, downwards API environment variable injection into the thing which says namespace. And it's like, you are running in, like your pod that you are right now, if for some reason you need to know, is running in Kubeflow versus default versus, which I believe actually is already the case for controller. But let me just confirm. So that's actually what I was trying to get to. Sorry, we should have looked at this as well, which is
So yeah, so here namespace system is what's hard coded in the controller, but that felt wrong for front end and back end.
Okay, so this is a funny one. If you then look at how we deploy this, there'll be an overlay probably somewhere going on here that is
Oh wait, namespace at the very top. That
yes,
one.
that's also set there, but then but the way that we actually apply it is by I believe we remove it. What I'm saying is like when we install it in our current install steps, I don't think you end up with this namespace. Maybe you do though. Maybe it's this one. We definitely override it somewhere. Like otherwise, obviously, it wouldn't work when we did the tests. Like when we run end-to-end tests, you know what I mean? Like we install it. Oh, actually, we go make deploy. So config default. Yeah, that's what I thought. Config default. And does this remove namespace? Oh, you know, these are getting injected. They are getting injected, but it's not. I don't remember why. That is interesting to me that actually that manager has a namespace in there. Because when you do a deploy in our make deploy, it doesn't do that, right? What it does is it that's workspace namespace, that's something else. Create controller namespace. Yeah, so we go here. This is set up here as workspace controller system, which is probably because of that prefix that we just talked about, right? Yeah, that's overriding there. So it must be just creating a it just happens to be that dash system is the same, so it's colliding with this and just ensuring that that exists. You know what I mean? This is just kind of, there's just a side effect because of this. It's kind of silly. This is what Kubeflow does. This is not our code. It's just because when you go to default, customize, name prefix is workspace controller dash, which means for every resource, including namespaces, which workspace controller dash system is then also workspace controller dash.
Interesting. Okay. Okay.
And then we're just hard coding that in.
But I guess
we do need to
it
solve this
feels-
problem. What I'm saying is we need to solve this problem for other places too. Like it's just we need to. The only thing that I require is that we are not requiring a specific namespace for anything for the controller front end. I'm happy that they should all run in the same namespace. That's fine. But,
okay, that was one of the primary things of if you cared about controllers.
So right now, obviously, we've got a problem, right, which is called workspace controller system,
Yes.
right? Which is obviously
Yes.
we don't want it to be the front end shouldn't run there. That doesn't make any sense. So,
Right.
So instead, it's more like we move everything to a one namespace, but that namespace should be configurable. Right now, you can hard code it as Kubeflow if you really like, but I mean, I know that Andre was trying to push us towards Kubeflow system, but then I was like, all you've done is now fragmented us even further. You know what I mean? Like this, because most apps are not moving. So like, actually, I'm trying to remember. Deploy KF does move. Maybe it does. The auth stuff for the dashboard needs to be in its own namespace for security reasons, right? Which is that it's likely that users will want to secure the auth running stuff like OAuth2 proxy, which already runs, I believe. I don't remember what the default manifests do. We can just, let's check. I'm also used to thinking about distributions. They'll have moved it around. You need to go to 110. Common OAuth2 proxy. Let's see where that runs. I forgot. I wrote this code and I forgot where it is. Namespace. Yeah, it runs in its own namespace called OAuth2 proxy. Okay. And that's important for security reasons. But again, now we deal with the fact that namespace don't have things like shared secrets and this is where Kubeflow pipeline starts having a lot of problems because each namespace needs to have information to be able to, anyway. So we don't have that problem though, because thankfully we centrally, the controller runs for the whole cluster. So that's all that really matters. Okay. So my answer to your question here is first off, understand that customize lets you change the namespace of every single resource. So in the same way that this. So I would recommend structuring this in a very similar way. I mean, it's not similar, but like effectively you normally have base and then at least overlays. So my recommendation is that you have.
I have well, so I have
like,
a comment later. If we can just work these comments top to bottom, I do cover that. But so like this
so the structure, the structure needs to be workspace / backend / config.
Well, sorry. Can we please do this in order? Because it'd just be easier. Like the name of this deployment, like the name for this stuff for backend gets repeated in a lot of resources. So just like, let's start with the name, not namespace, but the name, which they have encoded right now as nbv2/backend. This should just be backend and allow a configurable name.
So let me just check one thing, because we had a really lot of discussion about this a while ago. I think it was in the design doc. I'm just trying to remember where it was. Actually, no, I think it might have been in the in our notes here. We might have talked about it last year, so maybe it got knocked into an archive. No, okay, maybe not. I guess it's because I think we talked about the probable solution. There's a problem, which is that the controller uses KubeBuilder to generate its manifests, and the other pieces don't, but they all need to be deployed together in a way that's consistent, right? Like, so this is kind of so I think it'll be above, is my suspicion. No, not. Interesting. Okay. What I would so if we think about it, we have to think about it from what you actually do to deploy it. That's why the deploy guide is the thing which kind of leads this, which is you step 1, deploy controller, and presumably the step there would be installing it in Kubeflow or Kubeflow system, or maybe Kubeflow-workspaces or something. And then you install the front backend, which is in Kubeflow-workspaces, and then you install the front end, which is also in the same place. So all that needs to happen is whatever the system namespace is, needs to be configurable, and then nothing can collide in it. So if we come back to your question, which is the make part of it is separate, but the manifest should be structured. The namespace probably doesn't even need to be in there, really. But
that's another. If we just work my comments top to down, we can cover all these, because
it probably shouldn't even be in the other one as well, But
So here, in terms of the metadata.name of things, just call this backend with a configurable prefix. That's the answer here.
You can do either. It's kind of up to you.
Okay.
It's good so that the user can change it in the case that it somehow collides with something they care about. But you could also call it API. Like, it doesn't necessarily need to be called backend. I mean, backend is fine, but
okay.
This is backend. Yeah, it's only one container we have right now. We don't have any other backends, but we might in the future. Like, there definitely might be other services like SSH proxying or something, but I don't know if that will be under a backend or somewhere else. Probably will be under backend, I'd imagine, but maybe not.
Okay.
And so I don't know, definitely don't add any prefix here. Add it with a customization at least, just so that it's clean.
Perfect.
And then internally, all you need to be is consistent. So like, your labels need to be selecting correctly, and then also your labels should be, as a side note, I forgot to say that, your labels should be added in the same way that, so if we go to the root one, right, which was default customization, obviously this one is not as big of a deal because you don't have any of these complicated things going on.
Right.
But we do have services though, so that is something you will need to know. That's fine, because that's actually targeting the certificate. That's fine. The part that you would have is over some specific patches, right? So they've specified them here, right? Which is deployments and things. So you want to highlight the available things that users actually want to change in the manifest as close as possible. Of course, a lot of people are going to want Helm charts and things. We can come to that later, but That's definitely not the first step. I think we shouldn't do a Helm chart until we have a just dashboard Helm chart. We should have a dashboard Helm chart first. Not much point why would you have workspace one but not a dashboard?
Yep.
Because anyone making it into a platform will be using the customized because that makes a lot more sense. So for their end users to package however they're packaging it, the rest of Kubeflow. So yeah, so yep, I would put it. I would probably do this. This is obviously confusing because this is actually not changeable. All this is like this because of a side effect of this.
Right.
This is kind of weird, right?
Yes.
But notably, I think we do have the ability to make deployed anywhere though, right? Like, maybe not. Because I know that you can run we literally, in our tests, we run, we create the namespace, we apply that, we then install the controller manager, deploying the manager, and it builds the image, it then sets the namespace here, yeah. Because all it is it's just effectively, you end up with an because we haven't noticed that we actually have a namespace in here as well, you will accidentally create another namespace in here, I believe. But, it's, we should just remove that namespace, you know what I mean? Like, effectively from the manifest. Because by going kubectl apply, oh no, you go make deploy, right? Which presumably internally does default.
Or whatever your context is.
No, what I mean is, it goes into C config manager. It edits the thing to use whatever your image.
Sorry, yes.
And then it goes build, then apply. So this will actually be creating a namespace as well, even if you had changed the namespace like we sometimes. Well, it happens to be the same in this particular case, so it's not. But in the case that it was a different name here, it would still work, but it would be also creating workspace control system just because of a side effect of this. So yeah. And so interestingly, what Trainer seems to do is they've just hard coded it as Kubeflow system. They're assuming that exists. You know what I mean? They do even create it here too. Of course, to be clear, namespace only affects the namespace configs of the resources, not namespaces themselves. That doesn't make sense, obviously. Yeah, okay, so from my perspective, what I would do is that pretty much, which is I also would group these. This is not how, so default is an overlay, right? So you need a base. So in the case of the controller.
So I hate to repeat myself.
Can we just
work the comments top to down? So we answered the first one we answered, the second one we answered.
Yes, well, yeah. So don't do that. Yep.
Namespace we were talking about. This next one is in match labels. I see no reason. I mean,
do you need to set? We actually didn't say this. I don't believe any of them set namespace. But let me just confirm. To be clear, they do. They just set this one in this case. That's a bit strange. Interesting. This one doesn't set it either. Where does it go? So webhook. Let's see what that one does. Doesn't set a namespace. These are CRDs for the global. Well, we don't really have a good reference for this because all of them have that. They do set system. I do think you need to set it because if you don't set it, it's not equivalent to setting it to empty. It's setting it to default.
Okay.
So setting it as system is fine, I guess. So what did he set it as? He set it as backend system. Yeah, just call it system, I guess. Just call it system.
Okay.
Yep, that's fine. And then it's just consistent.
And then so next here is selector match labels. I get there are cases. I was about to
say you use customize to do that. Sorry, I forgot. That's what I wanted to show you. So you can add labels here. You should add base ones, definitely. So we're sorry, I lost this, yeah. This is correct, but this is fine. This is correct. This is correct. Like,
Okay.
but also this part is not though. So the it should be
components listed in best practices, but again, like, I mean, that isn't a grand all be all.
So I'm just trying to remember if we have an injector of namespace labels of label selectors anywhere here. Oh, it's not looking at default, that's why. Labels. You could add custom ones, but the config manager patches. I'm not, so like the structure just needs to not get in the way of users stuff. Like, so it needs to universally and precisely within the context of this namespace, select these pods, obviously, right? These two need to be a unique thing.
Right.
Within this namespace. So at minimum, you need a component, but I think you might also need a name, right? Which is like kind of
so that's that at like the app label is the name, but maybe like it's very confusing to me.
That's what I'm saying. You could do workspace. The name should be workspace backend. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
Like, and so it's the same. And then component within workspace backend is nothing because there's only one, right? Like, or we could add API or something, right? Or whatever, right? You know, it's whatever the name of this deployment is, which in this case, it's just going to be backend. So it should just be, there's only one component, right? I think because app.name is like, what app is this for? Technically, that's not true. Obviously, it's what Kubeflow workspaces would be the app, you know what I mean? And then all three of them would have, then this could be changed to component. So maybe that's maybe what it is. Maybe it's more like,
so component, if you like follow Kubernetes guidance, like the app Kubernetes IO/component generally is recommended to be a value like front end, back end,
that's what I'm saying, yes.
cache.
So what we should do is, that's what I'm saying. So we should rename this from workspace controller to workspace, Kubeflow workspaces, and then have a third label, which is component, which says for this particular one, controller. And then the way we do that is rather than, like, we could just hard code it in here, right? But instead, maybe we should hard code it in like here, you know what I mean? Because this adds to all resources and selectors, right? And it's effectively like, just to make sure that all of them have the same, and if we go to trainer, I'm pretty sure they will have done exactly that, which is going to be, because we had a big debate about it a long time ago. That's the manager. Base, maybe it's on a base. Maybe they didn't. Where are they adding labels? We should stop recording now anyway. This has gone on way too long. Let me just start recording. It's only us now anyway. We're just still reviewing the stuff. Anyway, thank you.